Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. I tell you, it's all kicking off at this end. Loads to get through. Of course, in this detail, I know Julia's been across this as well. In Labour's first year, the Office of National Statistics has put long-term net migration at 204,000 for the first 12 months in office. That's a low. It's gone right down. Sounds good, but it's the Tories that put the measures in place to reduce those numbers. But the headlines just keep on coming, and these aren't so good. Home Office data showing 36,273 asylum seekers are now in hotels. That's the date up to the end of September. That's up 13% from June. I don't know where the rest of them have gone. They've also lost a bunch of migrants as well, which is a bit clumsy. We'll come on to that too. Also, Rachel Reeves, as you know, unleashed a £30 billion tax hit during that autumn budget yesterday, freezing income tax, national insurance thresholds for 3 years while bowing to left-wing pressure to scrap the two-child benefit cap, sending projected welfare spending through the roof, up by 16 billion quid and breaking Labour's tax pledges. Straightforward question, where does this leave Reeves and Starmer going forward? And as you'll now be well aware, Labour is cooking up plans that could scrap around 95% of jury trials, with David Lammy proposing these judge-only hearings for most offensive. His aim is to tackle that massive backlog of nearly 80,000 cases. We're going to continue to take another deep dive into this story. We should not let this one go. Chris Daw, KC, joins us a little later in the programme. We have everything you need to know at this end, and of course, as ever, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Peter Barnes with us in just a moment. And that question, I'm going to ask this with a straight face, no tongue-in-cheek. Will Labour solve immigration? Just think about that for a second. And there's two bits of interesting news on the issue of migration, so you better buckle in for some of this. Deep breaths all round. Let's take a look at the main highlights that have come out of the Home Office. So 110,051 people claimed asylum in the year ending September 2025. Some 51,249 people arrived in the UK through illegal routes. It's greater if you look at the number just under Starmer, but this is for the year to the end of September. Small boat arrivals making up 89% of illegal entrants. Of those seeking asylum, the government say 36,273 people were being housed in hotels. There are more people coming in. Where are all the others? So there's that. And then there's this. More than 53,000 illegal migrants have absconded and gone missing, according to Home Office figures. Now, I shouldn't laugh at this, but it is breathtaking incompetence. I mean, at a level that you can't really define. Is there a word for it? I'm sure the Germans have got a long word for it somewhere. I don't know what goes beyond breathtaking incompetence. There must be something, or something politely we could say on air. This is a leaked document, by the way, that was headed absconder pool. Pool. It's a pool of absconders. Is that the collective noun for absconders? It's a pool of absconders. I can think of others. It suggests that, as of October, there are 53,298 migrants who've breached their immigration bail or escaped from detention centres, and a further 736 foreign offenders have also absconded and gone missing after being released from prison. Wow. I mean, I don't think it's particularly a right-wing point to suggest that's crazy. That is disturbing. That's very, very worrying. So you put all of this together, so you've got the numbers of migrants coming into the country going down, but that's mostly legal migrants, and of course the Tories put in all sorts of visa limitations which facilitated those numbers. There's no sort of brilliance from Keir Starmer or the Home Office on this one. This was already in the pipeline. We'd seen that number drop. This was done largely to appease the issue around concern on immigration. But those coming illegally, that number is stubbornly high. 51,249 people arriving through illegal routes in the year till September, in the month till September this year. And of course, if you want to look at it in a wider sphere, under Starmer being in office, it goes well over now the 60,000 mark. So that isn't really, that's staying where it is. That's immovable, that one. They keep on coming. If you offer a load of accommodation, you're going to be nice and warm, a roof over your head, you're going to get your meals, you might not be buying a season ticket for Villa, but nonetheless you will be enjoying safety and all that goes with it, NHS, dentistry and the like. That is massive. They say they're getting to grips with it. Will Labour solve immigration? A serious question. Give us your assessment, your overview of both these sets of figures and whether you think this government will surprise us all and actually solve the problem. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word from Peter Barnes on this, political strategist. Regular with us on the programme. Peter, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. How's it going?
All good at this end. Nice to have you with us again. Always worth looking at stories such as this. These figures came out this morning from the Home Office. The ones about asylum seekers going missed came out, well, it was a memo I think we weren't supposed to see. This was a leaked document from the Home Office. It is worth having a little reminder from the Home Secretary herself, Shabana Mahmood, talking about action on closing hotels. Here she is.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that question. We are working across government with ministers on closing every hotel as soon as possible and by the end of this Parliament. As we've all seen, it's a complex process, must be delivered through a controlled and managed and orderly programme of work. We don't want to be in a situation where without an alternative ready, we start exiting hotels before it is time to do so. But I can assure him we will take a balanced and evidence-based approach towards the decision-making that we will make here on the locations that we will use and how we will exit hotels, and I look forward to talking to him in more detail about these plans in due course.
I mean, it's a kind of ping-pong thing, Peter, isn't it? I mean, they keep talking about, oh, we're going to do this and we've got another idea for that. We're going to take people out of the hotels. But, of course, that isn't really the sole issue, because taking people out of hotels just suggests you're going to put them somewhere else. I mean, it's the coalface of the problem is not being addressed.
No, I just like how she thinks everything is controlled, managed and evidence-based, because if it was, they'd all resign, because they're not in control of this. If you lose 53,000 people, you aren't in charge of the nation's borders. You just aren't. Yeah. And you're so right that this idea the Labour Party have is, well, people just want them out of the hotels. We'll do that, and then that's fine. No, the real issue is the number of people coming here, staying here, the government losing them. These are just the ones that we know that we've lost, let alone the ones that we don't know we've lost. Let's not forget we had an Office of National Statistics that forgot how to count people leaving the country. So we do have rather big problems when it comes to basic addition. But, let's try and solve the small things first, shall we? But it's rather ridiculous. Yet again, Shabana Mahmood, touted as the great saviour for the Labour Party on the issue of immigration, has yet to really do anything. She's tinkered around with some stuff with the European Court of Human Rights and all, and the ECHR, a few bits there, but nothing really that is going to actually tackle this issue. Because as you rightly say, Ian, when you keep rolling out the red carpet, they're going to keep coming because everybody would. Why wouldn't you? You go to France, you get nothing. You come here, you get everything. So people are going to keep coming. And yeah, this is just yet again more chaos, more drama, and the budget yesterday has only compounded this problem because yet again it is the British taxpayer that's forking out thousands of pounds, if not billions in the entirety, to fund their incompetence and to keep Keir Starmer in a job. That is what we saw.
It is extraordinary, and I kind of I sound like a stuck record here, Peter, but the idea that it's beyond the wit of mankind to stop tens of thousands of young men rowing across the English Channel. I mean, it's beyond belief. We've got AI. I keep using the example. Elon Musk can send a rocket in the sky and then reverse it back into its launch pad effortlessly. All manner of malarkey we can do on our iPhones. We've got drones. We've got all sorts of technology. But we cannot stop this. There's not even a sign of being able to stop it. The physical stopping of that channel crossing story has eluded every government for the last 10 years.
It's simply because they don't have the political will to do what is necessary, and that is to reform or relieve the ECHR. Until they find the courage and the strength of their own convictions to actually do that one thing and begin to dismantle the entire legal framework, it is going to continue. You can tinker around the edges, you can do all the other stuff they like, but that is what is keeping people here. That is what is stopping the removals. That is what is preventing the government from being able to actually manage this crisis and be able to protect people here at home. And until they do that, the rest of it's just nonsense. It's all nonsense. And I can't believe that yet again we're going. How many years has this been going on now?
Forever.
I love coming on this and talking about it, but I'm running out of things to say because this is the real crux of it. We're now at that point where we're seeing the deliberate incompetence, because that's what it is. I don't think it's accidental incompetence. I think they're deliberately doing this because they don't want to do what is necessary, because they don't want to lose their voter base. They don't want to lose what they think is their path to power. And unfortunately, it's not. And we're paying the price for the whims of political cowards. That's what it is.
And you know what? They tend to say things like, yeah, but if you look at the amount of people we're arresting who shouldn't be in this country, that has gone up from October to September. October last year, September this year. 11,000 raids, over 8,000 migrants arrested. That's an increase year on year. But of course, these are kind of people that work in takeaway delivery, salons and car washes, those kind of areas. They're not generally the people that come across the channel. So that area, again, seems to elude them. And even arresting people is one thing, deporting them is quite another.
Exactly. You shouldn't need to arrest them because they shouldn't be here. That's the reality of it. This is the thing. They're taking victory laps for things that shouldn't have to happen in the first place. And it's infuriating, yet again, to see this happen again and again and again. That, you know, they take these big, long parades, say, look how wonderful, well, we've arrested all these people. They shouldn't be in the country. They shouldn't have made it to Britain. And yet again, it is the taxpayer that is forking out billions now to keep funding this stuff. And you know, it's just infuriating at this point now because everybody can see it. Everybody knows the answer, but the government won't act. And that's the important bit to remember. Not that it can't, it won't.
Correct.
And until we get rid of them, we're stuck. And that's what it is. But this nation is in paralysis at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it literally won't do anything. And we never, ever hear anything about sort of the operational aspect of stopping boats. You know, people talk about, well, Sunak used to talk about stopping the boats, and that came to nothing. I mean, the Rwanda thing never saw the light of day. And then Starmer went down this curious route of smashing the gangs, which sort of really meant nothing at all. So we're really in a kind of stalemate on this, and you never get info on the real detail of the story. Another area where we have got a little bit more info, we of course covered the budget yesterday as it happened live. Well, the OBR actually covered it before anyone as it happened before the actual budget, which was curious. But now we've sort of dived into the detail a little bit. What we do know, some big headlines out of this: 43 tax rises, of course, across that budget yesterday. 60-odd minutes to tell us that it's going to be more expensive to live here. It's worth having a reminder of the Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, who slammed the Chancellor yesterday. Have a listen.
Labour are hiking taxes to pay for welfare. This is a budget for Benefit Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, paid for by working people. This budget increases benefits for 560,000 families by an average of £5,000. They are hiking taxes on workers, pensioners and savers to pay for handouts to keep their backbenchers quiet.
Well, I know everybody's using the phrase Kemi was on fire yesterday, Peter, but she really did sock it to Labour yesterday.
Yeah, I have to admit, it was one of the best performances she's given at the dispatch box. A lot of us were saying, oh, old Kemi is back again. Do you remember her? Do you remember the thing that people liked? Which was quite nice to see. But the thing is, it was somewhat of an open goal. If she missed at this point, she really did have to go. Because,
yes, true.
I mean, that budget was just a catastrophe. A catastrophe. And it was done nothing more to keep Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves in a job. That's why all the way before you heard Labour values, Labour values. Whenever you hear that, think it's going to cost me a fortune. immigration,
Yep.
because that's usually what it means. And yet again, it was the backbenchers. It was to keep them happy, to keep them in line, to make sure they've got their pork, that they can say that what good people they are, while they have squeezed the middle beyond living memory. It is absolutely absurd. There were 100 tax rises on the table, and like you said, we've done just over 40 made it through the final gate. That is, it's obscene. It's obscene. Yeah. And yet again, it's tinkering at the edges. It's reform to get money now without thinking further down the line. And it's actually going to leave us in a worse position, because if you take the mansion tax, everybody with an ounce of common sense who's got a little bit of money is going to leave the country. They're going to downsize. They're going to not pay these taxes. Because this is the thing. The more complex you make the tax system, the more advantageous it is to try and get around it. Yeah. And it's just so short-termed. So short-termed. And, you know, there's not a single thing in that budget I thought, oh, well, that's all right. Not a single one.
I tell you what I resent more than anything is that, I mean, the tax rises and the way that, you know, they decided to proportion various elements of, you know, what is available, etc., how it was handed out, who got what, who didn't get what, etc. I mean, that's carnage, and we can talk about that forever. What I really resent, Peter, is this was really a budget to save Keir Starmer's skin, right? I mean, this was all about an oncoming leadership challenge, which will happen at some point. It'll be just before those May elections, or more probably just after those May elections. Someone's going to challenge him, and it's going to come from the left, and there's a lot of sizzling lefties on those backbenchers, rammed full of, if they're brutally honest, Corbynites and the like. So he wants to be able to say to them, look, you know, did the two-child benefit cap thing, tax the millionaires with their big houses. That's what this was all about. This was about saving Keir Starmer's career.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, you're so right. I think it'll come just after the May elections, because they're going to lose in England, Scotland and Wales in a very dramatic fashion that's going to make the Tories' general election loss look like child's play. I mean, it's going to be brutal. And the left is going to say it's because you were so mean and so hard on the issue of immigration. And that will be their justification, and that's where the left will launch its platform from. Because, yet again, Keir Starmer's given the monster its beast, its food, thinking it's controlled it. It's not. It's just made it want more, and every time you do this with the backbenchers of the Labour Party, they just want more and more and more, and he's got to stop doing it, and he's actually got to try leading for once. But, you know, there's more chance of me voting for the Greens than there is of that, I suppose.
Well, you never know. Might happen.
You know, it's just absurd. No. Unless I fall down and hit my head very hard, that's unlikely to happen.
Some kind of lobotomy.
It's just absurd to me. Yeah, exactly. It's absurd that we're living through this moment of just saving one man's job who doesn't deserve the job in the first place. Yeah. Yesterday was infuriating. I don't really like Budget Day anyway, but yesterday was just one of the most craven bits of Westminster politics, and the real rot at the core of it. That's what was on display yesterday, the rot of Westminster.
Spot on. Peter, stay with us. Peter Barnes, political strategist, with us, telling it like it is. Over to you as well with your comments, particularly on that issue of Labour and immigration. You've heard those figures. Legal immigration is down. I mean, it's down significantly. We're in different territory. It isn't down to some genius of Labour, Starmer, the Home Secretary. None of that caper going on. This is all actions that were put in by the previous Conservative government, but that won't stop Labour taking all the credit for this one. However, the other numbers of illegal immigration are deeply disturbing. That's really just stubbornly staying where it is. Plus, on top of that, we've lost 53,000 immigrants. I'm going to ask that question. Will Labour ever solve this problem? 0344 499 1000. Our lines are open. This is Talk. big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Michael. It says, don't believe the spin. The net migration figure appears lower because of the extra number of Brits fleeing the country. Still plenty more foreign nationals, plus 204,000 more than have left. Good point. And one in from Trevor in Harrow, who says, afternoon, Ian. Although many things that Labour have announced since they became to power, I think are absolutely bonkers. But this scrapping of the jury system, which we're going to talk about in the next hour, in most cases absolutely terrifies me. It reminds me of the Enabling Act in Germany in the 1930s. Even if it's not true, it will be seen by many that this is a way for Labour to imprison or make criminals of political opponents. I don't think it should be up to one party to change this 900-year-old system. That's the kind of thing we really need to go to a referendum on. Although I know they wouldn't let us have one. And it's very hard to meet a barrister anywhere that will be in favour of this. There's bound to be the odd straggler at the back. We'll talk to Chris Daw, defence barrister, very senior in his field, his views. He's apoplectic, I can tell you that much. Details on the way. Meantime, we have Peter Barnes with us. It was sounding a little apoplectic, I would say, Peter, in the last section. Shall we move and continue in that mode? Because this is the story coming out of the United States. Very disturbing. The gunman who shot 2 US National Guard members just blocks away from the White House. Authorities say it was a targeted attack with both guardsmen in critical condition. Let's have a listen to the president responding to this story.
We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops to help protect our capital city.
Isn't it funny, Peter, when you hear, I was talking to a friend about the Trump approach to certain issues. Even if you don't like Trump very much, I'd like to hear Starmer talk like that. You know, if you're not meant to be here and you don't like the country, we don't want you here. It's very straightforward stuff. It's not particularly contentious. It should be almost taught in schools. It's that obvious to most decent people. But we never hear that. We hear a lot of obfuscation from our politicians, and there is the American president dealing with a horrendous attack on 2 of their National Guards who are in terrible conditions in hospital. And his response is about as robust as it could be.
Yeah, that's the one thing you can always say about the President of the United States is he will defend the United States. And unfortunately, we have a Prime Minister that uses the smallest minority case for the majority. And that's the real difference between the two, is that in this country, we obsess over the individual case of the most far-flung kind of obscure situation. And we use that as the basis for every policy that we do. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. And this is how you end up with the situation that we're in, where we have an uncontrolled border. The one thing I will say about the shooting in DC is actually we have to be careful because a lot of it is actually down to operational failures. A lot of kind of miscommunication seems to be flying around in the between the agencies and all the rest of it. But Donald Trump is perfectly right to to highlight here that there are people that you have let into your country and we've let into ours that mean to cause it harm, that don't like the way we live, that don't like our customs and our culture and want them gone. And unfortunately, we put them up in a 4-star hotel. So I can see why a lot of people get very annoyed by this, because I am one of them. It is just basic common sense that if you don't know who people are, or these people pose a threat, you don't welcome them in and you don't give them a 4-star hotel.
And
it should be taught in schools, but it should need to be.
You don't import people from the third world into the first world and expect it all to go swimmingly well. That's not a comment about, people certainly on the left, they get very, very uncomfortable. They discombobulate when you say that, and the left-wing meerkats pop their head up and go, what's he saying? What's he saying? But this is an irredeemable reality, that it's always going to throw up all sorts of cultural clashes and issues, and in the worst cases, such as what's happened in Washington, D.C. yesterday, it will throw up those kind of people that mean harm to the first world for their own political or whatever religious, sometimes, reasons. So it's not even hard to understand that this could be a problem. And Trump has outlined it, and the headlines we've got over here is that we're increasing it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think you have to remember that the left have this view because they think that our culture is the bad guys. They think we're the bad guys because of racism and cultural domination and all this kind of stuff. The history of slavery. They want us to suffer. They think that we're bad. And yet, you look around the world and everybody wants to come here. There is a reason for that. And the left will never get that into their heads because they don't see it the way that everybody else, with a brain actually sees it. Well, and until they get over that difference, again, we're stuck with incompetence.
Spot on. Let's do a final one here. We'll have to be fairly swift on this. This, of course, is, as we've talked about this a little bit over the last couple of days. We're going to take a deeper dive later in the programme. Labour's new plans to scrap around 95% of juries. David Lammy is proposing this. It's his name on the tin. Here's the man saying this is the only way forward to scrap jury cases in 95% of the time. He's very, very forthright on this, apparently, although we did have a slightly different view back in 2020. Let's have a listen.
The jury system is fundamental to our constitutional arrangement. We should not use the coronavirus as a cover to abandon juries, which is the opportunity to be judged by 12 of your peers. Juries being replaced by judges and magistrates is effectively the establishment, rather than your peers who live in your community deciding what justice should be.
And now he is the establishment, Peter. I've heard people change their mind, but that's a spectacular about turn. That's your full 360, right?
Yeah, can I just say, Ian, I'm so glad that you're talking about this. I heard your show yesterday where you brought this up, and I thought it was brilliant because this is the single most important thing. The budget comes and goes. This is changing British justice. Yeah. It is changing your right to be heard by a jury of your peers. This is more important than anything because it is a deliberate erosion of one of the most fundamental rights that we have, goes all the way back to Magna Carta. It is so important to Britain. It's so important to justice. And I tell you now, I used to think Ed Miliband was the biggest threat in that cabinet. David Lammy now is, because he's going to take away your rights, because that's what he's just about to do.
Spot on. On that point, Peter, thank you very much indeed, as ever. Peter Barnes with us on the show. Over to you. 0344 499 1000. There's a whole bunch of questions around this. Can Labour ever solve immigration? What is your take, by the way? In addition to those figures of illegal immigration, we now know that legal immigration is down. Legal immigration is down to around about 210,000, I think the official figure is. So this is something that many people would say, well, we encourage that. We're always going to need a certain amount of immigration, so the word on the street is. There's always going to be a certain amount you need. If you've got a shortage of brain surgeons, then you need some brain surgeons. If you've got a shortage of care workers, apparently you need some care workers. Do you fully concur with that? Could a country like ours survive with no immigration, legal or otherwise? Could you actually make that work if there was no one, absolutely no one, coming into the country? So we've got those figures, a drop of a drop from 649,000 in the year to June. That's a drop of nearly 80% from the peak of 2023. Net migration to the UK dropped to 204,000. That's the lowest it's been for a long, long time. Big, big drop. Does that placate you in any way? What's your reading of that? How do you analyse what that kind of truly means? There to be 204,000. So, I mean, some say, well, that's kind of roughly about what it should be. It's a lot of people, right? And then that's the legal stuff. Then you've got the illegal stuff. Can Labour ever solve that? The Channel migrant crisis. Man, is it a crisis. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. It sounds to me like it's Reg says, it sounds to me like it's cost the whole country to save one man's job. Yeah, I think you're right, Reg. That's exactly what that budget was about. There's no getting away from it. This is not like a political mischief and just sort of making something up just to make a smart point. I genuinely believe this was about Labour going, right, there's no point in chasing that kind of reform card, which we've sort of tried to give it a go with. New Home Secretary is a little bit more to the right than the last one. It's not any of that. This is about saving Keir Starmer's skin. Because when it comes to any leadership challenge, he wants to be able to say to all the left element of his party, look, I did exactly what you wanted. 2-child benefit cap, yeah, scrap that. Upping the tax on people with big houses, posh swines, did that. Look at me, the old socialist, can't help myself, can I? That's what he wants to say. And that's what this was about. We literally are paying the price to save Keir Starmer's career. And don't let anybody tell you any differently. 0344 499 1000. So, in Labour's first year in office, the ONS has put long-term net migration at 204,000 for the first 12 months in office. Now, that does sound good, but of course it was the Conservative Party that put those measures, those visa limitations in place to reduce those numbers. All the while, the Home Office data shows that 36,273 asylum seekers are in hotels to the end of September. Now, that is up since June by 13%. You wonder where the others have gone, because there's more people that came on boats, for example, than that figure. So where did all the rest end up? And we also learned that there's 53,000 illegal migrants missing. Yeah, you heard that correctly. In a moment, Harjap Singh Bangal, UK immigration lawyer, is going to be with us. First, Tony Smith, former head of UK Border Force. Good afternoon to you, Tony. Always good to talk. I know I've said this before, but you and I have been discussing this for about 2 decades. And, you know, here we are still in the same immovable position. We get politicians from all sides, but it's Labour that happen to be in power, so they have to take this on the chin, talk about how we're getting to grips with it. But no one's at the coalface of the problem, are they? You know, it's all very well saying, well, we're going to put limitations on how long you can be here, and, you know, we'll try and morph the accommodation so it goes from hotel to, I don't know, barracks or something. But the actual stopping of people coming on boats is the bit that no one's been able to get to grips with. Is it actually possible?
Well, it is possible, Ian, to stop the boats, but I'm afraid it requires a very significant change in political will, leadership, probably a change to the British Constitution itself, actually. Yeah. Certainly demurring from a number of international conventions, the like of which that sort of political leadership, in my experience, quite a lot of it now, has only been seen in Australia by Tony Abbott. With the Operation Sovereign Borders, where they did stop the boats. That's not the same, actually. It's a lot of differences we could discuss between that and the boats coming here, but he did have that political will. He was vilified in Australia for doing it, and by a lot of by courts, international affair, but he did it, and he did stop the boats. And now, more recently, of course, President Trump. We are seeing asylum seekers being turned away now at the Mexican border. Again, running the gauntlet with courts and lobby groups in America and international organisations. But that is the sort of leadership you need. Somebody that has got the brass neck almost, if you like, to take on the establishment on behalf of the people and say enough is enough. And I'm afraid that we haven't seen that.
We never see it, do we? And I mean, even if you're not a Trump supporter, you just know that if he was in charge here, this would not be happening. I'm confident enough to say that, Tony, that if he was the Prime Minister, people would not be coming across on boats. He would have found a workaround on the system. And you could be the greatest critic of Trump, and boy, I'm on that list of being a critic of Trump. However, on those points, the way I'm listening to him respond to the attempted murder of 2 National Guards in Washington yesterday, just the words that are used, and what we tend to get is a sort of a pre-prepared press release that a Home Secretary reads out that's been written by some spad somewhere, and they stand at the dispatch box and in very sort of clinical, clipped tones read out this, you know, very fluent response. There's no fire in the belly on these.
Well, that's what I mean. Obviously, it's a different political system in the States. You know, he's the president. He can issue executive orders. He can whistle up the military at a moment's notice and put them on the southern border, help out the border patrol, all sorts of things that he can do. And I mean, he'll have his battles with Congress. But I do think that, you know, here, firstly, we're not going to be able to send them back to the EU, are we? You know, the one-in, one-out scheme isn't really going to do it, I don't think, Ian.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. It's still around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still around, but I mean, do you really think that's going to stop people in Calais from coming across? You know this. You've been down there. You've worked down there. You know, I think you've got to disincentivize the crossings, and that means making life really, really uncomfortable for migrants who do come across, and that means detaining them, deporting them, riding roughshod through a number of piece of legislation, international and national legislation, and investing significant in detention accommodation, looking at the Hardy Singh judgments, and you can detain people for as long as you like under if they're illegal, you know, fighting off countries that are just not playing ball on returns. All of those things is a really tough measures, and lots of people, you know, to the left will be shouting at their radio, and I say, you can't do all that, that's outrageous. But if we really want to do this, then it does require that sort of bold approach, a very bold approach politically, and a very significant change in direction to what we've got now. As things stand, I think we muddle along. You know, weather is good for us in the channel. You know, you see MPs tweeting, "Oh, look, we've done really well. There weren't any boats last week."
Yeah, but how bad is that we have to rely on the wind and the sunshine to determine what our immigration policy looks like?
Well, that's it. It's the weather, really, that's the main deterrent at the moment. There's plenty massing to come across.
Yeah.
And, I think we're going to keep running at about 40,000, 50,000 a year. I'm hoping that the one in, one out will ramp up to thousands, but I'm not confident it will, looking at the state of French politics and EU politics at the moment. So the public tolerance level will, I think, continue to be, this has to stop. We have to stop it. But I'm afraid under this administration, or even a new administration, we would need that kind of very bold political approach.
Yeah.
And what is good news for them, Ian, is the net migration figures. I think 204,000 net is a very significant reduction on what it's been in the last couple of years. And the main reason for that, they'll all argue about it's up to us or it's down to us, Labour, Conservatives. It's down to reversing the disastrous Boris wave that was introduced after COVID, where visas were granted to pretty well everybody who wanted to come here. And we had huge numbers of people coming, some of whom most of whom actually are still here. Now, we've still got numbers coming, and we're up to 380 odd thousand of these are still coming in from non-EU countries.
Sure.
The new bit has been because more and more British people and European people who were settled here have decided that they want to go and live somewhere else. So we are seeing a demographic change in the population, Ian, even though the figures are a lot better in terms of overall. So, there's a lot going on in the world of immigration, legal and illegal immigration. It's not going to stay out the headlines for long, I don't think.
And we didn't even get on to the 53,000 that have gone missing, but maybe we'll save that for another day, Tony. Great to have you with us as ever. Thank you, Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. He knows his way around this story. Someone else very familiar with this terrain, UK immigration lawyer Harjap Singh Bangal. Good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us again.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, I've always said this, whether you're left-wing, right-wing, whether you're a lawyer, not a lawyer, whatever, we can all surely agree that the situation, particularly the Channel situation, is unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great when you have boats coming in, people risking their lives and, no sense of control over knowing who's coming in and who isn't. You have a system that's broken, but more importantly, you have an administration, you have an executive which is supposed to carry out all of your laws that you've made out, which is absolutely not fit for purpose. And how many times have we sat here and spoke about this, I think over at least the past 10 years, that this whole Home Office is absolutely not fit for purpose. And the worst thing is that the MPs and the Home Office itself tells us this, that we can't handle this. Well, who can, and why can't you handle it? You have funding. And instead of giving yourself bonuses and pay rises, as the top execs do in these sort of organizations, why don't you start developing a system that does work or has worked previously and make it fit for purpose? And this is the whole reason for this whole mess. What you get is you're developing laws and visa systems where you're not vetting or not seeing that perhaps you're going to have a Boris wave as such. You then have people here who go missing. You have no tracking on them. Last week, a report came out that 2,000 kids, minors, were missing in asylum seekers. You've now got today evidence or a leak as such, not verified, but a Home Office at 50,000 odd people who are supposed to be reporting on and signing on are now absconding. That's nothing new, people absconding. But the numbers obviously will upset people. And this is something that Labour have to get control on. They realise, look, we've got 4 years left. We really have to get a control on this. They've been doing some things that are right. So pulling out the pull factors as such for migrants, for the legal migrants. Now, that's going to create problems in itself because you've got the care industry up in arms saying, well, hold on, you promised carers that you'd give them indefinite in 5 years. Now you're saying 15 years. Why should they stay here? They can move on to other countries such as Canada, Australia. And you've got them saying, well, the care industry specifically saying, well, our industry is going to be decimated. But on the other flip side, you have the government saying, well, there are only 130,000 vacancies and 600,000 odd, including dependents, of which half were dependents, actually came on care visas. So we've got more than enough. So the legal migrants here feel they've been punished for coming here on visas and working here legally. And there's problems and friction between them and illegal migrants, because they look at the illegal migrants and say, well, hold on, we're paying tax, we came here legally, we had to fit the requirements, ABC, and it's people coming on boats, they're staying in hotels, they're getting £50 odd a week. You know, they don't have to work, or they're not allowed to work. So why are we treated differently? It's a total mess, Ian.
It is a total mess. Harjap, it's a great analysis. Great to have you with us again as well. Harjap Singh Bangal, UK immigration lawyer. I think it's fair to say that Harjap tends to speak a more common sense argument than we often hear from some immigration lawyers. I think the fabric of immigration is changed as well. And he made a good point there, that if you've come over on a visa legally and you've come here to work because you applied for a job that was advertised by the British government and you are legit, but then you discover there's going to be some limitations on your status. Now, that might be fine because you've got to keep things in check. You've got to keep revisiting someone's status. If they came over as a care worker, are they still a care worker? Are they not working at all? Have they drifted into some other profession? Was the whole visa thing a ruse in the first place? You've got to look at all of that. But if you're legit and you're struggling, you might well look at people coming across the channel and think, well, hang on, how does that work? Because I went through the whole process, cost me a few quid to do it. A matey over there came over on a rubber dinghy to Dover, and he's living in the Four Seasons. I mean, that might well rub. So you've got arguments even within the immigration community, if you like, on this. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is talk.
It is talk just gone 10 to 2. Let's go to Carl down in London. What have you got for us, Carl? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. Stopping the boats is the easiest thing you can do. Starmer and Macron are good buddies. We all know that. They're always hugging each other, yeah? All Starmer has to do is say, Mr. Macron, when we border force pick up the migrants on their dinghies, we need to bring them back to a French port.
Yeah.
That would do two things. First of all, it would stop the boats. Then Macron could say, anyone entering France to get to the UK will not do it because they'll be brought back. It'd save all the hassle he's got in the French ports. It'd save all the trouble in France, and you would stop the boats. Yeah. It's so simple.
But wouldn't Macron go, well, why would I agree to that?
Well, because it would save him the problem he's getting in his French
So, because obviously, Macron doesn't want the problem either, does he? It's true, the people lining up in their thousands in Calais, the French don't need that. So it would stop that bit as well.
Exactly, it'd do both things. It'd stop the boats and it'd stop all the problems he's getting in France with people flooding the country to get to here.
Yeah, but what if France, if you're the migrant, what if France is a close second on your list? And if you do get sent back to France, you go, I'm fine with that. I can claim residency in France or claim asylum in France.
Judging by him coming through Greece, Italy, Spain, Germany, then France, I don't think France is
that's
their
a good
destination.
point. That's a good point. I mean, if nothing else, you'd give it a go, wouldn't you?
They could stop it, Ian. They could stop it.
You go, right, we're going to do this from next Tuesday. Any boat that arrives will be literally within the hour will be taken back to France on a nominated port. We'll let Emmanuel Macron choose the port. Off they'll go, and then we'll measure the stats, 3 months later. Let's try it for 3 months.
And the other thing, Ian, it would stop them all. It would stop them flooding in. It would save Macron a lot of. I don't think they want to do it, Ian. I don't think they want to.
You do wonder, but then the Tories didn't stop it either.
But Macron and Starmer are great buddies. They're always meeting each other. They're going
love a hug.
The willing stuff and all that.
Yeah.
Well, all Starmer. Look, he could say to Macron, look, I'm going to be out of a job if I don't stop this. Please help me. Let me bring them back to France. Let's give it a go.
Yeah.
Just give it a go.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, it's such an obvious... I mean, what you've just said makes sense. Unless there's, I don't know, some Mandarin, I think that's the word, in the Home Office, would go, yeah, we thought about that, and this is why it wouldn't work. I don't know. I can't imagine they probably have. Sometimes it is the kind of Occam's razor thing, and the most obvious answer is like staring you in the face. Great call, Carl. Thank you for starting us off. I want to get a word in from Charlie in East Sussex. Fire away, Charlie. What have you got for us?
Well, good afternoon, Ian. Do you know what, mate? I'm going to stop listening to all this radio. I'm just going to me sounds of the 70s on, I think, or 80s.
That's right. Look, Tony Blackburn still turns in a good slot, so.
And what a legend that man is.
100%.
Now, Ian, we are all absolutely deluded. There's a fog of delusion over everybody here. No one's going to do anything about this migration, illegal migration, at all. And I'll tell you for why. You've only got to go on to gov.co.uk or gov.uk, and what I'll get as an asylum seeker. It says here what you'll get. You get your 49 quid. So cash support. You want an Aspen card. You get $9.95 for each person in your household instead if your accommodation provides food.
Yeah.
Honestly, extra money for this. Pregnant mother, extra £5 a week. Baby under 1 year, £9.50 a week. Extra child, £5. But we're not getting mothers with children, are we?
No.
We're getting young guys. So look, if you're living in a tent in France, you've only got to get your smartphone out, which they've all got, and think, oh, actually, I'm going to be put up, and I'm going to give them 50 quid a week in the UK. Let's get on the boat and go. Well, honestly,
it is a no-brainer, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
If you were in that position, whatever your reason, whether you're a genuine refugee who's escaped absolute horror, and I don't think that those boat crossings are full of people of that background. I mean, there will be some, of course, I get it. I'm not stupid, I'm not heartless. But I also think there's just some very discerning people who think, I don't want to live in Eritrea anymore, and the UK looks like a fine place to be. And people do move around in the 21st century. They want to change their life. They've seen it online. 20 years ago, it seemed like a distant dream to do something like that. Today, it's imminently doable. And that's what we're dealing with. And if it's attractive, why would you not give it a go?
Well, absolutely, and we've made it attractive. And if you can just go online onto the government's own website, see what you're going to get. I mean, honestly, Ian, let's face it, we are kidding ourselves. If the government want to stop it, they can stop it.
Yeah.
And I really believe that I can't put my finger on it. I really can't. But I've got this feeling. You know, when the hair goes up on the back of your neck when you think someone's watching you, it's that kind of feeling that something's going on, but it's that something that it's in the ether. You can't put your finger on it, but you think, what on earth really is going on?
Well, in the absence of it, it's such a... you're absolutely right, Charlie. It's such a... unfathomable situation, isn't it? It's so bizarre, if you think about it, that tens of thousands of people jump on a boat and float over to the UK, and within a couple of hours they're in a hotel getting fed. And, you know, I'm not suggesting they've got a season ticket for a football club or they're off to the theatre on a nightly basis. That doesn't matter. What they've got is pretty tasty. And it's so weird. It's so bizarre. If somebody had told us this 20 years ago, we'd have gone, well, no, that wouldn't happen, because as soon as one boat arrived, they'd stop the next one. It would never happen again. And yet here we are, many hundreds of thousands of people later, still debating it. Charlie, I move for time. Enjoy Tony Blackburn. I know you're going to love him. Never spins a bag tune, that man. 0344 499 1000. Bill says Labour will never sort immigration because they know they will lose votes. There's definitely something in that, Bill. Thank you very much indeed. And Carey says 53,000, 10 times that, I reckon. And let's face it, they have no idea really at the Home Office. Charles says that in Melksham. More from you on the way, 0344 499 1000. We are going to talk jury service as well. We never got a chance to really delve into a bit of a phone-in on the jury service. Do you support the idea of scrapping juries in some cases, or is this the most abhorrent thing that's happened to our legal system and the most dangerous? All of that and more. And you, coming up next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Super gripped indeed. A lot going on at this end. We are, of course, talking about Labour's first year. The ONS, the Office of National Statistics, have put long-term net migration at 204,000 for their first 12 months in office. That's an all-time low, largely down, actually, to policies that the Tories put in, the kind of visa restrictions and the like. So there's no way Starmer can be claiming any victory on this. But he will also probably refute that this was his fault as well. And that is 36,273 asylum seekers in hotels at the end of this, by the end of September this year. That is up 13% from June. And none of that covers another issue, and that's the 53,000 asylum seekers that have gone missing. No one knows where they are. Some of them were in prison. No idea. Details on that. Also this afternoon, Rachel Reeves, of course, as you would have heard yesterday, we covered it live, unleashing a £30 billion tax hit during that autumn budget, freezing income tax rates, national insurance thresholds for 3 years, while bowing to pressure to scrap the two-child benefit cap, sending projected welfare spending up by £16 billion. This breaks Labour's tax pledge, of course, not to do that. Where does it leave Reeves and Starmer? Because let's make no bones about it, this was largely done to save Keir Starmer's career when he gets a challenge for the leadership job. Details on that. And as we now know, Labour cooking up plans that could scrap around 95% of jury trials. David Lammy proposing judge-only hearings for most offences. He's aiming to tackle backlogs, sending roughly 77,000 cases to a new lower-tier court. This is so important and so fundamental, I can't even find the words. We will explore this a little more in detail in just a moment. But I want your responses on it as well, particularly if you've been in a court situation. And if you've been in one where, I heard somebody say quite recently, well, you know, don't commit crime, and then you won't end up in court. I mean, that is akin to saying we no longer believe in innocent until proven guilty, that every person that's in a courtroom is already guilty on that basis. I mean, that would be preposterous. It'd be horrendous to do that. North Korea might do that. The United Kingdom aren't supposed to do that. But that rather kind of goes to the nub of one of the issues on this, and there are many to it. But in particular, the idea that you are tried by 12 men and women, your peers, as it were, as distinct from a judge whose job it isn't to define guilt, but his job is to preside over the proceedings and to make sure that everything on both sides is crystal clear, adhering to the book, and the 12 people watching the case have all the information they need to make up their mind. I'm putting it rather crudely, but that's more or less what it's about. So this goes right to the heart, this idea of scrapping 95% of jury trials. And of course, it's been around since Norman times. David Lammy, of course, is the man whose name is on the tin on this one. It's rather interesting that David Lammy is now the Justice Secretary, and he's advancing, it looks as if he's advancing this particular policy, because whilst he's saying it's about cutting backlogs, he hasn't always had this view. It's worth a reminder of what David Lammy was saying about juries just a few years ago. Here it is.
The jury system is fundamental to our constitutional arrangement. We should not use the coronavirus as a cover to abandon juries, which is the opportunity to be judged by 12 of your peers. Juries being replaced by judges and magistrates is effectively the establishment, rather than your peers who live in your community deciding what justice should be.
And now he is the establishment, and he's changed his mind, by all accounts. I speak with Chris Daw, KC, barrister, writer and broadcaster. Afternoon to you, Chris.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, I already had a rough idea what your view might be on this, and I think you probably, it's a view you would share, I think, with barristers, defence barristers, prosecutors, across the board, really. I mean, this has really put the cat among the pigeons.
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it, that a government that doesn't mention this in its manifesto at all, because frankly, who would have voted for them if they had? But they didn't mention it in their manifesto. And as you rightly pointed out, this is something that goes back around 1,000 years in one form or another. Of course, it's changed a lot over the years, but it goes back 1,000 years, and there are very many reasons why it's important. And perhaps your listeners and viewers may be interested in one particular story to kind of illustrate the importance of having juries to decide very difficult cases with emotion and morality involved and kind of very challenging circumstances. So you'll remember probably a few years back there was a gentleman called Stephen Owen, and he had a son called Darren who was 12, and Darren was run over and killed by a man called Kevin Taylor. Now, this was some years ago, and Kevin Taylor was a lorry driver, and he'd never passed a driving test, and he'd had numerous traffic convictions, and he ran over and killed Darren Owen when he was aged just 12. Taylor was prosecuted for dangerous driving or causing death by reckless driving, and he only got 18 months. And after his release, he drove past the family home and vandalised the boy's grave. Yeah. Now, this unsurprisingly upset the father of this young boy, Stephen Owen, and he took it upon himself to take a shotgun and go and find Taylor in an alleyway and shoot him with a shotgun. Now, unsurprisingly, he was charged with attempted murder and he was tried before a jury. And that jury heard all of the circumstances. They heard how this man had been shameless in his reaction to killing a 12-year-old boy, how he had provoked and deliberately antagonised the family of this young boy. And the jury in that case listened very carefully to the arguments on both sides. They listened to the defence putting the extreme emotional provocation that the father had suffered as a result of not only the death of his son, but the deliberate behaviour of Kevin Taylor after his son's death. And the jury found him not guilty of all charges. Wow. Now, some of your viewers and listeners might say, well, that's wrong, isn't it? Because he clearly committed the crime. But others might be saying to themselves, well, a jury can be trusted to get it right. Even when the law might say one thing on the page, juries are not just there to apply the law like AI or a robot or even a judge. They are there to apply the law of the land as they see it, as custodians of the morality and of the history and of the principles and the values of our society, even when those principles and those values may conflict with what the law says. And we have had that in our country for 1,000 years as a bastion against tyranny, the tyranny of judges' courts, the tyranny of the king's courts as they used to be, with no input from the public and no account of what people on the streets think is right and wrong. It is for these reasons that the jury system is so important. The minute you go down the slope of abolishing juries purely for financial reasons and because of utter mismanagement of the court system for decades, then you're starting to destroy one of the most important things that makes us British, which makes this country what it is. Why is it, as I say in every jury speech I make, why is it that the jury system has been exported all over the world, not everywhere, but to many countries, and it has been retained? It's a constitutional right in the United States. It is a constitutional right in Canada. And here, the country which invented the jury system, which has sustained it, and which has, and let's be honest, Ian, what other public institution in our society has the same level of public support and approval as the jury system? If you can find me a single example of anything that commands the same level of public support, then I'll give up, Ian. But there's nothing. You ask ordinary members of the public, what do you think? Is it fairer to be tried by 12 ordinary people or by a judge who may have prejudices, who come from a very specific background, who doesn't necessarily have all of the common sense and the everyday experiences of life, such as having your son run over by a disgusting human being and the emotional reaction that they may provoke? That's why we need juries in. We need juries because ordinary people, and that includes you and me, I'm not talking about any specific kind of person, because juries are amazing. They are so diverse. You can have a millionaire on a jury, you can have a bin man on a jury, you can have anyone on a jury, and that's the whole point. They bring together the wisdom of an entire society in microcosm, in a room, and they return verdicts based not only on the law, which they must of course apply, but on their consciences. And the minute you remove that from the system, you may as well use a computer to decide verdicts, because that's how valid I consider that they would be.
I mean, that's a brilliant, almost monologue. I say that in a positive way, Chris, and your passion is, loud and clear on this. What is your reading of judges and what they would think of this, because I would imagine there's, judges are also lawyers. There'd be quite a lot of judges who go, I don't want to do this. This is not my job as a judge. What's the divide like on that, do you
Let's put it this way, Ian. Firstly, judges, of course, are not allowed to comment on things publicly like this. But let's look at a couple of things that we do know. When the Criminal Bar Association asked us criminal barristers what we thought of this idea, the return was over 90% against scrapping juries in the way that's been proposed. I have no idea who the few percent left were that agreed with it, but they're certainly outliers when you think about those statistics. Now, when you think that the vast majority of judges are drawn from exactly that same pool of criminal barristers and of course, some criminal solicitors as well, but the vast majority come from that same pool, it would be quite extraordinary if on the journey between barrister and judge, they suddenly ditched all of those views and decided that they wanted to try cases on their own. My knowledge of what judges are saying about this, and some of them have said this not quite entirely publicly, but with a, as it were, a nod to their viewpoint, the vast majority, in fact, of judges are totally opposed to this because they know it's not necessary. It's not necessary because all we actually need to do is two things. One, stop clogging up the courts with really silly cases, for example, people being prosecuted for what they said on Twitter or whatever other nonsense that suddenly become flavour of the month amongst policing and prosecutors. So get rid of all that rubbish out of the court system. It's not even real crimes anyway. And secondly, just repair all the buildings and get all the courts actually sitting, because at the moment, a huge number of courts are not operating, 20-25% sometimes on any given day, not operating because the ceiling's fallen in, or the air conditioning, or the heating.
It's a bit rubbish, that, isn't it? That we can't. It's not because we haven't got capability, it's because the buildings are in a state of disrepair.
In a state of disrepair, and because of massive underfunding in terms of making sure there are sufficient judges available to sit, making sure that we have all of the facilities needed to deal with cases, but also making choices. We've chosen to prosecute more and more people. We've chosen to make sentences longer and longer, and as a consequence, the courts are more and more clogged up. So maybe we need a bigger picture idea than simply saying to ourselves, well, one way to do it is just whiz all the cases through quickly, let judges lock everybody up as quickly as possible, get people pleading guilty because they're frightened of what the judge will do. That's what this is all about. It's about bringing economic incompetence and political incompetence to bear on a problem and replacing it by destroying our entire constitutional structure that's existed for 1,000 years. In my view, this is not going to happen, actually, because I've already, if you read what's coming out of number 10, effectively, Keir Starmer's realised that this is going to be a monumentally unpopular policy. Definitely. That if you pick one thing to attack that the general public will stand against you on, I suggest it's the jury system. I genuinely don't think there's anything else.
I think that's left, right, rich, poor, black, white, whatever. Everybody unanimously pretty much goes, that's a fantastic system. Although, how do we answer this question, Chris? There are countries around the world that don't always have the jury system. How do they function? Because I'm sure some of those places they would argue actually our justice is very good and we don't always have juries.
There's a straightforward answer to that, and you're right that the Roman law system, which is in place in most of Europe, certainly in France and Italy and other countries, does not largely have juries. That largely has either one or more judges, professional judges. But the difference is that they too have thousands of years of history, and they have built into their systems a whole range of safeguards, such as, for example, the right to an automatic retrial. If you're found guilty, you can have a whole nother trial as an appeal. Now, what's being proposed here is not to replace the jury system with some other safeguards, but just to scrap it all together. And that, in effect, I mean, the idea that you keep it for this 5%, what's the difference? What's the difference? If you're charged with fraud and you could go to prison for 15 years, why is that somehow not a jury case? But if you're charged with rape and you could go to prison for 6 years, it is a jury case. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that you distinguish. You either say, on principle, for serious crimes where you're looking at serious jail time, a jury should be the ultimate fact finder, or you say, scrap the lot, get rid of them completely. And if you do that, if you're honest enough to say, we're going to get rid of it just to save money in the short term, I think you'd find that the public, not only lawyers, but the public would be out on the streets protesting against this. And I certainly have already said I would not accept a case in one of these courts, these trumped up non-jury courts that they're proposing to invent. I wouldn't do a case there. And not only that, I would go and stand outside on a picket line for as long as it took to bring the jury back.
Yeah, I mean, there's some real earned and experienced passion in everything you're saying there, Chris. I do also agree that I don't think this will see the light of day. We know that governments do have a habit of sort of testing, a bit of a litmus test, see what the reaction is. And the reaction has been pretty much everything you're saying. In fact, I'm not sure I've heard anybody come out with a sort of cohesive and very robust and even passionate argument to suggest that this would be a good way forward. And as you rightly say, and God, a 10-year-old could work this out. If you were scrapping the jury system due to some sort of philosophical moment of a revelation that you've had, wow, there is a better way, then maybe you could listen to that argument and debate it. But this isn't what this has been about. This is about how do we speed up the system, get rid of the very centrepiece of our justice structure, and that would be crazy. But of course, it probably won't happen now, and that's arguably a good thing. In terms of the jury system as it is, we've spoken about this before, Chris. There are some cases, and I know you've worked on some pretty lengthy financial cases before. I was speaking to another barrister quite recently, oddly, I think worked on it with you. But anyway, he was, that issue around juries being able to digest the enormity and the complexity when, even a barrister will sometimes say, blimey, I couldn't follow what was going on there. It was hard enough for me and it's my job. Are there certain areas of the jury system where it seems ridiculous if you're going to have to sit for 8 months on a very, very complex and intricate issue around, I don't know, international VAT fraud or something?
Well, you make a very good point, but the answer is that the jury is absolutely capable of dealing with the fundamental issues in those cases. And the problem is not the jury system, once again. The problem is the increasing use of overly complex evidence and overly complex charges and far too much, millions of pages of digital material, etc., etc. Every fraud case I've ever done comes down to one pretty fundamental and straightforward proposition. Someone has either lied or deceived or been dishonest at some point in order to secure money or something else from someone else. And it's as simple as that. And juries well understand that. They know when they're judging dishonesty and lies and intent, these are all everyday common concepts. So you make a very good point. Our courts are currently clogged up with fraud and other long and complex cases, drugs, conspiracy, etc., which are taking 4, 5, 6 months, sometimes 18 months to finish. That's a problem with the way the cases are structured and prosecuted. It's not a problem with the juries that are there to try and make sense of it. If you pile a load of completely irrelevant and extraneous information onto the jury, yes, you strain the system, but that's not their fault. That's our fault as lawyers. That's the fault of those who choose the number of witnesses to call, the amount of evidence to use. In most cases, you can establish that someone's committed a fraud by charging 2 or 3 straightforward crimes of saying, well, on this occasion, you sent an email, it was clearly a lie, it was designed to get 100 million from someone, you're guilty of fraud, or you're not guilty because maybe the jury discerned it wasn't dishonest, that maybe there was some innocent explanation. But make it simple, make cases as simple as you can instead of defaulting to make them as complicated as you can, and you will stamp out all of these ludicrously long, overextended and pointlessly complex cases which are currently clogging up our system.
Great stuff. Brilliant, Chris. Thank you for being on with us. Chris Daw, KC, barrister, writer and broadcaster, getting right to the heart of that, and he didn't hold back. I think that represents the views of pretty much everybody. Or does it? Because I'm going to throw that out to you as well. 0344 499 1000. He gave a cracking and very emotional and disturbing example of why a jury system would be a very preferable system to just one man or woman sitting up there who clearly could not have all the time the kind of variety of experiences that individuals would bring to a court hearing. Just by dint of numbers, if nothing else. And then you crunch those views in the jury room and you come eventually to an agreement. So it's never fully perfect, by the way. But I want your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, do that. Download it from your App Store, because 1st of December, the old talkTV app will no longer work. It'll do nothing for you. Bin the beast is the campaign, and download the new Talk app, because that's where you can listen or watch and all the other stuff that comes along with the app as well. Do it now. You know it's the right thing to do. This one from Matt, who says, regarding trial by jury, the judge, jury, lawyers and witnesses do all they do so that we decide. A jury of our peers who, as far as is humanly possible, have no motive other than to seek the truth. How can that be removed and remain balanced? It's thank you, Matt, for that. It's absolutely bang on. Pav is in Harrow. On this very point, Pav, what have you got for us? Hi.
Good afternoon. I mean, I've got to confess, I'll preface what I'm going to say is the fact that I'm agreeing with...
We're going to try and get you back, Pav, on a better line. Your line is playing strange game. I don't know what the term... I don't know, it's knackered, mate. Breaking up. Yeah, thank you, James. That's the one. Greg is in Edinburgh. Greg, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi there. I very much echo what your barrister chap just said. He summed up almost exactly what I was going to say. But there were two things I was thinking about when I've heard even that they're going to think about doing this.
Yeah.
One is it's tradition, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of the oldest traditions we have in I know we're talking about the English jury system, but it goes back to Magna Carta.
Yep.
So that must mean it's white supremacist and fascist and nasty. And,
that's exactly what it is.
And it's British and it's horrible. And it's like the monarchy and all sorts of things. Let's scrap it and be all progressive.
Yeah, it's got that feeling. I'm sure Mr. Lammy would deny that, but it does have that feeling, doesn't it?
It does. And the second thing I think about, if we've just in the last year, we've been talking about worries about just how malleable the judiciary is with regards to political interference.
Yes.
You know, when we had the Stockport results, and suddenly all these judges were doing, that sounds suspiciously what the Prime Minister wants.
Yeah.
And so what they want to do is they want to get rid of the man in the street and the sense of the man on the woman on the Clapham omnibus. Get rid of that, and then you've got a sort of politically malleable judiciary who can do suspiciously what the government wants rather than what the common sense man in the street thinks is sensible.
It's interesting as well, because you've now made me think deeper into this, Greg, about the kind of sinister nature of statist politicians. And, you know, the Labour Party do quite like to have as many controls and tentacles over your life as possible. It's sort of in their DNA. And I wonder if there's a little bit of that going on here. You know, we are better to decide than you.
Well, I swithered when I heard that very good comment there by the barrister when he says the judges don't want that. But then we have had this worry about just how independent is the judiciary these days.
Yeah. It's a great point. On that very last note, Greg, thank you, mate, for that. It's a lovely call. I think we've got Pav back in Harrow. Pav, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Ian. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, loud and clear now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I wanted to preface the fact that what I was going to say to you, I'm agreeing with Chris Dorr. I'm going to get myself medically checked after this call just to make sure everything's okay, because it's not...
I know. It's not the usual... normally when we have Chris on, I have a row with him, so I don't know what's gone wrong here.
But he's absolutely correct, and he spoke about the 90%. I've got to be honest with you, as someone no longer in the industry, but certainly part of it in an indirect manner, I'm yet to find a single person who has got any credible alternative. And that's the problem. You can all talk about, they can bang on about, and I'll get to this in a second, about, wanting to replace it, which is what the Leveson recommendations were. But you've got to have something which is foreseeably better.
Correct.
And the problem here is, it's not just better. They haven't got anything. And that's the thing. And the irony, of course, is, Ian, is that this is a Lord Chancellor who in 2017, after his review, you may or may not, your audience may not know this, was basically championing the whole idea of juries, because in his own words, it meant that there was less chance of prejudice and bias against ethnic minority people, because obviously the majority of judges are from a particular background. This was just in 2017, not, 1938. And yet here we have a guy now who's shamelessly turned around and sacrificed those ideas, who is now turning around and jumping on this. I agree with you. I don't think it will see the light of day. But the concern is that at a time when confidence in the judiciary, for all sorts of reasons, some good, some bad, is at an all-time probably low, or certainly one of the lowest ebbs, that they think that by taking away an element of transparency, i.e. public participation, that will somehow reinvigorate it. I mean, it's just astonishingly bad thinking, to say the least. In terms of what Chris Dorr said, and this is one of the things that frustrates me, they bang on and on, a lot of these folks in the legal system, about what needs to be done. And partially I agree with him. There does need to be some funding. But as I've been banging on for years saying, Ian, one of the ways that you turn around and cut the backlog, along with obviously stop, worrying about people talking on Twitter or misrepresentation of a particular agenda, is you adopt the Australian system. For those who don't know, it's quite simple. You have professional magistrates. Now, whether or not you want to keep lay magistrates is a matter for other people. But the point about that is you have professional magistrates whose full-time job it is to hear, court cases, even at the magisterial level.
Yep.
They come in, it avoids the prosecutor having to read out, the charge sheet or indictment, as the Americans call it, in the way that it's some scripture or religious scripture, in the manner that it is now. So they come, they know the facts, and then they basically, you get the normal stuff from the prosecution, which says, name, charges, etc., and then you're straight over to the defence. That would take huge amounts of time at the magisterial level off. I have no idea, given that without getting too legal here, we happily use Australian law or Australian case precedent when we require it, why nobody has turned around and thought, hold on a second, this works over there. Obviously, they've got a smaller population than we have, but it would certainly expedite at a very easy level, often where the majority of cases go, that particular process. But neither Labour or the Conservatives have ever bothered to look at it. We can copy their polymer notes because they're obviously long-standing, but we can't do that. And that's the problem. There are other common-sense solutions available. I mean, I won't bore your audience with it, because I'm sure they've got better things than listen to, ideas about the law. But the bottom line is this would just be yet one of a further aspect of completely tone-deaf ideas, ironically, as I've said, by a guy who was championing this for all sorts of years. And as for the last point, because I'm conscious of the time, in terms of the offences, it's absolutely politicised. They wouldn't dare do this to rape offences because they know the backlash would be what a Labour government is, in inverted commas, messing around with it. Yes, there's precedent about taking jury trials away for defamation, but that was very specifically done in a specific area of law. The idea that in normal criminal law we can take it and it would exude any confidence is just frankly for the birds. But let's be honest, Ian, as you said in your first hour, and your colleague Julia said, it's not as though this particular government seems to have any idea, and it's why they're facing absolute electoral evisceration in 4 years.
Yeah, you're absolutely bang on. And certainly on that last point, Pav, great call, as ever. Some real passion out there today. And Catherine in Cardiff says, what a fabulous contributor Chris Dorr is. Top man. Yeah, I said that to Pav. Me and Chris often have rows about who should go to jail and who shouldn't. But there's been two areas where we have agreed recently. One is that he doesn't believe, people who put some bad words on Twitter or Facebook or wherever should be in jail. And he's got lots of variable reasons around that. And also the jury issue, where he was so incredibly passionate on that point. And I think he reflects the views of almost anyone. Unless you can tell me differently, our lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Breaking news at 25 to 3. Greater Manchester Police have said that a 31-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism. This is in relation to the Heaton Park synagogue attack last month after he arrived on an inbound flight at Manchester Airport on Thursday. So this is an interesting development about how potentially organised something might have been. Obviously, there are ongoing legal considerations, so we can't say much more than that. But this is an additional person of interest, clearly, to Greater Manchester Police. 31-year-old man arrested on suspicion of preparing acts of terrorism in relation to the Heaton Park attack last month. And this was after he arrived on an inbound flight at Manchester Airport on Thursday. Keep you updated with any more developments on that. Now, let's move to this. Reform leader Nigel Farage has offered legal support to farmers after several arrests were made at a tractor protest in Whitehall yesterday. These demonstrations targeted a 20% inheritance tax on agricultural property valued over £1 million, introduced, of course, by, who else, Chancellor Rachel Reeves last year. Alan Miller was at the protest yesterday. He took this video while he was there, and you'll note the issue at hand as soon as you see it. Have a look and a listen.
We've had 2 years of mad protests, and now we have this farmer being arrested by Trafalgar Square, a public space, on Section 14 notice, on a basis that for weeks this has been planned. There's a budget today. Rachel Reeves is in there. They're about to attack family farms and our whole backbone. And these guys are arresting a farmer whose tractor's here. This is absolutely outrageous. You've got to let your MPs know, you've got to let the government know. This is what we're dealing with in 2025.
This is what we're dealing with. Alan Miller joins us now, co-founder of the Together Declaration. Alan, good afternoon to you. A lot of passion there. Why was that particular farmer arrested? Was there some specific reason, or was it just the fact that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time?
I think, Ian, the Met Police issued a Section 14, which means that it's a dispersal notice under the Public Order Act. They did that after 5 p.m. The night before, announcing, after weeks being in discussions about this protest and the previous one being very orderly and calm and efficient and professional, that they would not allow any tractors into the area. Obviously, what that also meant was across London there were lots of tractors and Whitehall was pretty empty. So even on its own grounds, it was counterproductive. They did it on the basis that it would be disruptive and that keyword safety. But actually, one can't help but think it was utterly political. They didn't want the optics of tractors outside 10 Downing Street and by Parliament on the day of the budget. But the farmer was actually going to his vehicle. Some of the farmers had tractors on the roundabout. They were stationary. And one police officer was very agitated. And as the farmer went to apparently get keys out of his pocket, he was then arrested. And people were absolutely shocked. But a number of farmers were arrested yesterday, Ian. Some earlier in the day. Many were prevented and stopped and given the actual Section 14 notice. And some subsequently, when they were going back to their vehicles later in the day, and they were taken off, the vehicles were taken off, people were arrested. So what we can see here is a very uneven, not policing without fear or favour, but a direct attack on a very particular type of calm protest that, you know, we should have the democratic right to protest. It's a key issue for everyone in Britain. Millions are concerned about our food security, our family farms. As we've seen with our energy prices, we don't have energy security any longer. They're going up and up and up. And the British public are very concerned about this. So, you know, those images went worldwide, but people are furious that we've seen so many scenes across the nation over the last couple of years. And this particular protest was handled in this way.
And it's interesting that, I mean, it's always just, you know, farming, there's something about the entire world, the notion, the image that it conjures up, what it's there to do, its history, the family links of farming, which are absolutely solid and crucial. You know, this isn't about somebody inheriting a farm and then flogging it for a few quid. Farmers don't make as much money as people think. And of course, it's about passing it down the family, not in the way that you might pass down a bit of jewellery so a grandson a few years later can flog it. It's about keeping a business going, and a business that is massively central to our very existence. You know, it's called food, and farmers supply it.
Absolutely, Ian. And we, you know, in the 3 days preceding the protest, there were a number of slow drives around different regions and cities and the coastal areas of Britain, and we attended a lot of them. And you can see that the public really come out and support. They're all honking, they're greeting, they're coming over and saying thank you to our farmers. And we've got second, third, fourth, fifth generation farmers that simply won't be able to continue. Now, there's been a tiny concession, so it should be noted that even though the Labour Party has kind of doubled down generally, I think they recognise the strength of feeling. So what they've done is they said rather than just the 1 million, you can now make it 2 million. By sharing it with a spouse. Now, of course, as you say, the majority of farms, that covers very few farms, because the majority of farms have buildings, they have machinery, they have assets. These are not just leisure, enjoyable items. These are things that are central to keeping the business going. Yeah. And their net profit is tiny. They do this because it's a vocation, it's a way of life, it's part of the provenance and the lineage. And it seems that the technocrats in Whitehall and the Treasury and DEFRA are just contemptuous of our farmers, of working people and of the public. You know, what we saw yesterday with these scenes with the police, I think that Britain's going to have a real reckoning on a number of these things. And I certainly think that people are going to be punished in the May elections. But together, we're going to keep standing shoulder to shoulder with our farmers. We'd encourage your listeners and viewers to support us and them in doing so, because this is something that we cannot afford to go the same way as what's happened with our energy.
Correct. I noticed Nigel Farage has offered legal support to farmers after those arrests, which is a move in the right direction.
Absolutely. Nigel Farage came out very quickly, in fact, as soon as he'd heard about these arrests, and said that, you know, him and Reform would underwrite the legal costs of any farmer that's had this issue. And I think it speaks volumes, the difference in approach between a party that has the word Labour, is called Labour, that doesn't really care about labouring working people any longer, and then potentially a party that's a government in waiting and a prime minister in waiting that is very serious about farming. And he has said on numerous occasions that, you know, Reform would abolish the death tax for everyone, actually, IHT for all, because we've already paid income tax, capital gains tax, corporation tax, on and on it goes. Yeah. So, you know, I think that we really need to get to grips with the situation with agriculture in Britain and take it very seriously.
Spot on. Alan, it's always great to have you on. You know that. Thank you for coming on today. He is Alan Miller, co-founder of the Together Declaration. Thank you to him. And any comments on that particular issue? I think that's another one of those areas that goes sort of to the heart of what this Labour government simply don't understand. They don't get it. They're not, you know, the whole farmer thing. They're just landowning Tories in their mind. And that, I genuinely believe, is the springboard for a policy such as this. They just pulled it out the bag. Obviously, we also had the VAT on private schools, which comes from the same locker as this kind of thinking. It's all those areas that kind of just niggled them and bothered them and bugged them. Flipping Tories and their money and their traditions and their ways. We don't need these people. It just got the better of them. Because those that remain socialists after the age of about, let's be generous, after the age of 25, are essentially mentally ill. And that's not a pejorative. I mean, it's not. I'm not attempting to just be smart on saying that, but it is an illness, and it's a psychological illness, and one that I'm sure there are treatments out there that you could get. But the fact that you remain in that position makes you sort of a fairly disturbed character when it comes to logical thinking. You're unable to think properly and straight. So you sort of subscribe to wherever you've planted your flag, rather than logically employing what is demonstrably best. You will rather just go for what gives you the nicest feeling in the pit of your belly. It's kind of, you know, it's identity politics. It's that, but writ large in a more dramatic and damaging fashion. Let's go back to that issue of juries. Gareth in Berkshire. Gareth, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hi,
Ian. Thanks very much for having me on.
It's a pleasure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So my thoughts, the ultimate conspiracy theory. Someone once said that Marxism and socialism is a long march. And, you know, I think we are on a long march, and this is part of it. That you know, Tony Blair got a load of his mates, lefty lawyers, into top judges and judicial positions. And now what they're trying to do is take away any people input, any of the input of the people in that. So that's all that's left is the lawyers' decisions. And then we're on the way to the Marxist dictatorship, which is the way that this government is behaving, I'm afraid.
It's a kind of version of that, isn't it? I mean, even if it's not as dramatic as that, but it is a nod in that direction. I mean, David Lammy, who'd previously gone around the place saying, aren't juries fantastic, we have to keep them, and then suddenly he's in the position and no longer is quite as, it appears, no longer as emphatic as he once was. People of his political makeup would quite like the state to decide your guilt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not people like me and you.
Yep. No, I think that's absolutely what's going on in the background. This is not just about costs, saving costs and speeding things up. And as I've read in several places, and the lawyer you had on, the KC that you had on there earlier, there's lots of ways that our court system can be speeded up and made more effective. It's not about the juries. Yeah.
Spot on. Great call. Gareth, thank you. It's just gone 2:45. Just before we go to a break, this from Matt regarding trial by jury. Lawyers and witnesses do... Oh, I think I did read that. I'm going to read this again because it was a really good one. Regarding trial by jury, the judge, jury, lawyers and witnesses do all that they do so that we decide, a jury of our peers, as far as is humanly possible, have no motives than to seek the truth. How can that be removed and remain balanced? And it's the reason that was worth revisiting is because it just completely clarifies brilliantly what it's all about. Because lawyers, on their impressive salaries and with their vainglorious nature of wigs and cloaks and whatever they're called, all that goes with, and I love it, by the way. I never want that to ever change. I think it just, you need a level of a sort of very sobering, almost, I suppose you'd look at it in kind of the sense that you would look at a school having a certain code of etiquette and strictness. It's that. And it should be that in a courtroom. And the fact that you have these two sides, the prosecutor and the defender and the judge in the middle, and various other recorders and various other characters that are on each team, as it were. You have all of that, all of these people doing incredibly well. But ultimately, the only reason you're in that room is to decide whether somebody's guilty or innocent. And none of those impressive people with their wigs and gavels and God knows what else, none of them will make that decision. That's brilliant, isn't it? 12 people who live round the corner from you will make that decision. How pure is that? And that doesn't mean it's not without, on occasion, some difficulties and challenges. But that's the point, isn't it? It's argued out. And sometimes they have to go for a majority verdict, etc. Sometimes things get too much and the jury is dismissed and the case is revisited. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it closes there and then. But that's as pure as it can get. And I think, the idea that anyone thought it was even worth suggesting, even as a bit of a litmus test that we get rid of it, is for the buffoons, frankly. 0344 499 1000. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Back to your calls. A lot of response on jury trials. Graham's in Berkshire. Afternoon to you, Graham. What have you got for us?
Well, there's a couple of things. We've had a few jury decisions, particularly on things like criminal damage with regard to protest, which have been a bit iffy in some ways.
Okay.
But we've also had situations where if we had had a jury on the immigration trials, we might not have had people succeeding with the chicken nugget argument. So one wonders...
Yeah, that's very true.
If
I don't know how they work, some of the immigration ones. I mean, they're obviously, it's a very separate thing, isn't it? You don't have 12 people, as you rightly say, work it out, but maybe that should be the direction of travel.
I mean, you've also got the situation that without the jury, judge bias can be an issue.
Yeah.
And we've had that, again, back with judges who have been part of immigrant organisations.
Sure.
But I can't, however hard you try, and there are times it doesn't work properly.
Sure.
Would we really want a Stalinist-style state?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, would anybody?
And when you talk about what buffoon could actually think of such a thing,
yeah,
the same one that thought that Henry VII was Henry VIII's son.
It's a great point. Do you think there's any argument that some things could be heard just by one person, or maybe a couple of people?
I think there's an argument possibly for cutting it down from 12 to, say, 6 or 10. But I also think there's an argument for saying to solicitors that if you knowingly lie about something,
yep,
you are equally should be actually held either in contempt or for attempt to defraud. This would be particularly, again, in immigration cases where somebody is achieving benefits off us by lying about their age, lying about their change of religion, etc.
Yep.
And that should be treated as fraud because you're defrauding the country. Similarly with a politician who might say that they're qualified in a certain profession and not be. They've obtained advantage to get onto the register for being a politician with whatever party. Then one has to say, haven't they defrauded the public in that manner? That would be an interesting one for that rather good barrister you just had on.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Listen, great to have you on, Graham. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm going to talk to... You made some great points there as well, particularly about the immigration thing. You've had juries on those kind of cases. I know they're sort of tribunals rather than full-on cases, but you take the point. I'll talk to Richard in just a second. We've got the Voice of Doom, don't forget. Voice of Doom, day 11 or something, I think it is. Have a listen to the mystery voice. Here it is.
Rightly and properly.
That is a politician, of course. Could be young, old, left, right, dead, alive, male, female, whatever. Have another listen.
rightly and properly.
87222 if you think you have any idea who that is. If we get a right answer, we'll tell you after the news. One more time.
Rightly and properly.
87222. Richard in North London on that issue of juries. Richard, good afternoon.
Hi, great to talk to you again, Ian.
You too.
I mean, I think we're at the stage now where we have to say that this is now a failing state, and secondly that it's breaking its social contract with the people.
Yeah.
The French are very good at rioting when something like this, well, really for far less than this. And I think the British are being paid back for their eternal tolerance. I suggested to you last week that I wouldn't fight for the country anymore because really of 60 years of legislation saying if you say this, we're going to put you in prison. And I think it's got to the stage now, and obviously we have to try and get rid of this government in 3 or 4 years' time. But when I say it's a failing state, what I really mean is, I mean, in terms of political philosophy, I think this is, for instance, we are so divided over many things.
Sure.
That we couldn't fight a war anyway because, there were so many people here who didn't originate here. If there was what you call a total war, not a war, an army that involves all the population, millions of those people would go back to their homelands, and I wouldn't blame them. But the point about this is now a state and not a nation. This is, although it's the fifth or sixth biggest economy in the world, you've got a big version, really, if you like, of a country that is so divided or so badly.
No, you've put it brilliantly. It's a state rather than a nation. I've got to step in, Richard, because the news is about to kick in. But that is a brilliant analysis. It's a state, not a nation, and we should be a nation. There is just the terminology, the sound of each word, state v nation. We'll have the Voice of Doom result, hopefully, on the other side of the news, and, of course, more from you. Our lines are open. Let's get the news headlines now at 3.
Across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon and welcome back. So much to get through here, of course. We are talking about Labour and immigration, where they're at, how far they've got. I mean, the numbers are down, by the way. Net migration down to 204,000. This is not due to any kind of brilliance or diligence on behalf of the current government, largely down to the previous government's curtailing of certain visa conditions. But there are some other troubling news. The amount of asylum seekers in hotels, 36,273. That is up since June this year. And then there's another troubling stat here today. We've lost 53,000 asylum seekers. We don't know where they are. Some of them were even in jail, and we don't know where they've gone. So with tongue not in cheek, will Labour solve the immigration crisis? Your responses on that. Also this afternoon, as you've been hearing, we get a lot of response on this at the moment as well. Labour's plans could scrap around 95% of jury trials. David Lammy proposing judge-only hearings for most offences. Offences. It wouldn't be murder and manslaughter and rape, but it would be most offences. This could send 77,000 cases to a new lower tier court. I don't believe this could see the light of day, frankly. I genuinely can't imagine, with almost universal outrage at something like this, I can't see it going any further. But, you know, this is Keir Starmer's Labour government. Anything could flipping happen, right, kids? And also Sean Keach. He is, of course, the tech and science correspondent from The Sun. He's going to be joining us. He's got loads to talk about, from the budget to new Uber Eats delivery robots. Oh, I can't wait for those mummers to come knocking at my door. Do they knock, or do they just honk a horn? Or do they stare through your window? Details on the way. Everything you need to know, and of course all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. Kev in Brentwood says, I reckon Starmer made Lammy Justice Minister thinking that he'd be tucked away safely and couldn't possibly screw anything up. How wrong could he be? What's interesting about this is almost the classic case. I'm no defender of David Lammy, and he's, you know, invariably idiotic and chaotic in equal measure. But this isn't his idea, right? This is not his idea. Someone has come up with this, and I'm sure it's been bubbling away for many years. But like all of these policies, they get tucked away somewhere in each department, in this case the Ministry of Justice, and nobody brings it out because it's a bit too toxic, a bit too worrying. So it just remains there. And then this time it's come out and they've gone, excuse me, Minister, can you sell this policy, please? Give it a test. See, test the waters, Mr. Lammy. See what you get. So and this is the weird job of these guys. You know, you have to then go out and sell a policy that you had previously spoken quite emphatically against for a number of years. This happens right across all the departments of government. I mean, it's a bonkers system if you think about it. I don't think it'll see the light of day, but I think Kev might be onto something there. Thank you. Becca in Norfolk, I'm on the fence with the jury issue. I wouldn't want a jury of lefties and religious people, but on the other hand, I wouldn't want a judge that gives a paedophile a suspended sentence and sends someone to jail for hurty words on social media. Okay, can't argue with that. It's a fair point. At least if you've got 12 people there, you have got a cross-section. You know, no one individual should be. They do that in China, essentially. Russia, Putin, you know, you name it. These kind of characters can decide on someone's guilt. Let's move back then to the budget story. It is worth a revisit, of course. Rachel Reeves unleashing that £30 billion tax hit during the autumn budget yesterday. It was full of all sorts of announcements. Most of it you didn't want to hear, but it did get a good, robust response from Kemi Badenoch. Let's have a listen to what the Tory leader had to say.
Labour are hiking taxes to pay for welfare. Yeah. This is a budget for Benefit Street, Madam Deputy Speaker, paid for by working people. This budget increases benefits for 560,000 families by an average of £5,000. They are hiking taxes on workers, pensioners and savers to pay for handouts to keep their backbenchers quiet.
To keep the backbenchers quiet, Ryan Saby is economics editor over there at The Sun. Ryan, nice to have you on as ever. It did feel to me, is it too cynical? I was looking at this and thinking this looks more like a how to save the Prime Minister's skin budget than anything, because if that pesky leadership challenge does come hurtling around the corner, and the smart money says at some point it will, he will at least be armoured up to battle with the left and say, look, you know, all the things you wanted, I've done. Mansion tax, ticked. Two-child benefit cap, ticked. We've addressed it all. Vote for me. Is that too cynical?
I think you're absolutely right, Ian. And I think one thing that stood out yesterday, I was actually sat there in the House of Commons chamber, was the absolutely ferocious noise from those Labour MPs every single time that one of those policies was announced. You say mansion tax, big roar, two-child benefit cap lifted. There was the big roar. And I think part of that was basically to shore up the position of both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. Now, there's been a lot of noise over the past few weeks about their position, particularly the Prime Minister. We had all the briefing about Wes Streeting and whether he would fight a challenge. And I just think, as you say, it's there to show that they are on the side of the constituency that matters the most to them at the moment, and that is the Labour MPs. I think there were two audiences they wanted to try and keep on side yesterday, Labour MPs and the money markets, and it seems like both of them are on side. And when it comes to the MPs, I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have bought themselves 6 months that will take them to those May elections.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's interesting because there's, you know, certain policies that, as you rightly say, that divide between money markets and who aren't, you know, perturbed by, you know, little announcements that might be seen as vanity projects or, you know, the odd manifesto, mansion tax, etc. They're interested in big numbers and overarching numbers and headroom and all that kind of stuff. Just explain a little more about that, Ryan, because, you know, I think many people would kind of assume that, you know, a Labour government have a precarious relationship with finances, certainly towards the end of their times in office, it seems. What is it that Rachel Reeves did that perked up those that are, you know, potentially in charge of lots of accounts and money and the entire markets that surround it?
I think one of the things that she had to try and do over, yesterday was trying to reassure those people in the city that the money that she had promised to bring in would actually add up. And if all that money is add up and all the city traders think, yeah, I agree, it looks like the money is guaranteed, they will be happy and you won't see government borrowing costs rise. And I think that was really, really important because I think that almost is one of her sort of saving graces for remaining in her job. If she doesn't, appeal to the money markets, she could be out of a job pretty quickly. Remember when we saw an adverse reaction when we had those tears in the House of Commons a few months ago. So that's why it was really, really important. Now, I would say, it doesn't matter if there are lots of different bits of tax here and there, there's talk of 43 tax rises, as long as that money's coming in, so they don't mind. So if it's an income tax hike on the basic rate, higher additional rates, they don't care about that. As long as that money can be guaranteed, they are satisfied and you won't see a nasty reaction.
Yeah. In terms of the number crunchers, because you know what budgets are like, Ryan, you've sat through many of them. It's always 24, 48 hours later when people start to really look at the detail. Many tax rises in there. Overarchingly, is this let's be honest, we saw quite a lot of the budget in 2 or 3 weeks leading up to it, and then about an hour before we saw all of the budget because the OBR accidentally pressed the send button on their website or whatever the heck happened. Is this it's a typical Labour budget. The Sun splashing on that very point this morning, picking up on the issue of benefits and all the rest of it. I suppose, they are a Labour government. You could be generous to them and say, well, you know what? That's what a Labour government are meant to do.
Yeah, this is what they do. If it moves, they tax it. And that's what you had yesterday. You had 43 tax rises across the board. It was mansion taxes, milkshakes. It was all there. And I think Rachel Reeves had to do that. She had to make sure. The one thing that she wanted to do was increase that financial buffer. She got that up to about £22 billion. The thing is about that is the plan is that she won't have to come back again next year and ask for even more tax rises. But how does it affect the everyday person? Well, there's lots of analysis out, lots of think tanks, these organisations around Westminster who crunch the numbers. Typical worker earns £35,000. If by freezing those tax thresholds, they could be £1,400 worse off. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation say the average household will be £850 worse off over the course of this Parliament. So it's all very well and good pointing to people in big houses paying £7,500 for one-off taxes, but actually, if you look at those thresholds and how they're frozen, everyone will be affected by that. And Rachel Reeves, she said a few weeks ago that those with the broadest shoulders will have to pay. Well, actually, it seems like everyone will have to do their bit.
Everyone is going to do their bit. Yeah, we're all in it together, as a previous administration once said. Ryan, great to have you on with us. Thank you, Ryan Saby, economics editor over there at The Sun. Thank you to him. I don't know whether you've crunched it up yourself and worked out whether you're better off, worse off. I don't think there's many in the better category on this one. To me, it was the philosophical nature of this, wasn't it? That here was a chancellor who, on the last budget, or in between the last budget and this, was trying to get through cuts to the increase in welfare. Still not getting to the fundamental nuts and bolts of the issue of welfare. The unsustainable, soon-to-be imploding Department for Welfare budget. It wasn't really this was about just stopping the rate that it was rising, and she couldn't get that through. They had to renege on that because the backbenchers, discombobulated, said, no, it's a terrible thing to do. You can't do anything like this because that sounds evil, and only the Tories are evil, and we're Labour supporters, and we're socialists, and therefore we're nicer people. That's a fact in their rather strange bubble-like world. So that's kind of what happened there. And then, lo and behold, she goes and slams another $15 billion on top of that budget. That can't carry on. Fact. Back to your calls. Dave is down in London. What are your thoughts on all this, Dave? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right.
I kind of blame Reform for the child benefit cap to take off. They bizarrely came out with it. They were thinking about doing it because for some strange reason, some thinks that it encourages people to have more children, but that's not actually what the problem is for childlessness right now. And so Labour thought, well, we can't be outdone by Reform on this, and half the party wanted it back anyway. So that was going to be a slam dunk. So they didn't bring that back in to get people out of poverty. Starmer's brought it back in to fend off any Reform thing that could come up in the future. And the rest of his party is saying, well, we want it anyway, whether Reform want it or not. And
do you think it's one of those things that Reform said in the same way that, you've now got a Labour Home Secretary saying things that, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's not getting anywhere near to a resolution or solving the illegal immigration problem. But she sounds like she's gone further than even previous Tory Home Secretaries. But you don't really sense they actually believe it, because if they did, they'd be doing something more robust. Do you think Reform just did that to sort of remove the right-wing toxicity of their brand? By saying that, people on the left could go, oh, wow, that's interesting. Reform are going to scrap the two-child benefit cap. Do you think it was more that?
To be honest, the phrase, what were you thinking? I have no idea what they were thinking. I was listening to your alternative channel this morning, and they interviewed a single mother in South Shields with 3 kids. And they said to her, what do you think of the budget? She said, well, I like, the child cap release is great. They were asking her specifically about it. So she went on to say it was good. South Shields is the most safe Labour seat in the country. And then they said, so what did you think of the budget? She said, oh, I didn't like it. And I thought, hang on a minute, you've just been... And they said, well, why is that? She said, well, I do go out to work, but I'm not encouraged to work because when I go past a certain amount, I'm better off. And then they said, and what will you be voting going forward? She said, well, I won't be voting for Labour because I didn't like the budget. I'm thinking, here's a single mum, 3 kids, just had the cap lifted. And then she said, I think I'll be voting for the Greens.
Wow,
I mean,
that's interesting.
You can't make this up, right? So here's someone that's been given the money by Labour. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But it's not going far enough. So I'll go for the real radical option.
Because you get a lot more with the Greens, of course. You know, they'll probably double all of the entitlements. I mean, this is a party that wants to make heroin dealing legal, but renting out your house illegal.
Well, exactly.
That's how messed up those characters are.
Yeah, the Greens will just tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, and double the benefit. But the issue now is 45% of the GDP is now taxed. And like people say, if they don't get this down into the 30s, I just don't know where this is going to go. And
I have no idea.
50 billion out. You can't, 45%, that's mental.
Yeah, totally. Listen, great call, Dave. Thank you for that. Dave down in London. Jenny in Bicester says, Ian, the Labour MPs clapped and cheered like seals, but the people outside the Commons did not because they knew that their taxes would go up. The budget was a spend now and pay later, but the latter relies on the tax base being there, and the taxpayers are leaving, and the tax takers are arriving in their thousands, says Jenny. Yeah, good observation. I mean, I thought it was... I mean, yeah, all right. What I said to Ryan Saby is, you know, it's a left-wing party. They're meant to do a budget that's a bit like this. So I suppose it's not even a house point, it's an acknowledgement that if you're a Labour socialist party, that is how you do a budget, I guess. But it doesn't, there's not a real sense that it reflects reality. And of course, Labour are up to their neck in it for a whole manner of other reasons of incompetence and accusations that they couldn't run a What's-It in a brewery. So I don't think they're out the woods, even with their own on this. 0344 499 1000. Right, before the news, have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom? It's the mystery voice with a political backdrop to it. You're looking for the name of a politician. Here's the voice.
Rightly and properly.
These are some of the guesses. Roy Jenkins, Cecil Parkinson, both no's. John Stonehouse, it is not. Danny Alexander, remember him, it is not. William Waldegrave, Betty Boothroyd, no. Francis Pym, it isn't. Ed Miller, I nearly said Eddie Miliband. It's not Ed or Eddie Miliband. We have not got a right answer, which means it rolls over tomorrow for day 12. Right now, 3:20, this is Talk. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is from John in Poole, who says, Ian, in response to your question about scrapping the jury trials, let me tell you this. Lunchbox Lammy, this character, and his fellow cohorts are very quickly turning Britain into a communist state. They want everyone beholden to the state. This is the truth here. I don't disagree. I mean, that is a form of... And they probably wouldn't hide away from it. You know, if you get a lefty on a good day, they will probably say, yeah, I fundamentally believe that the state can run things better than individuals in so many ways. The state is not necessarily a specific person in the state, but the idea of a state, the systems, the establishment can invariably run things more effectively, more efficiently than individuals could. And they have that belief. They genuinely, intellectually, that's a weird word to use in close proximity to the word Labour, but you take the point, intellectually believe that that's a far more effective way of running a country. Whereas most people, I think, and most certainly Conservative Reform and parties such as that, have a slightly more autonomous flavour to their politics, which is that individuals are better at making decisions for their lives. Back to your calls. Matthew is in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matthew? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Great to speak to you again.
Thank you.
It's all very sinister, isn't it? You know, we're going to get ID cards, never been mentioned before. They're now going to get rid of juries. We've got left-wing judges judging on immigration. Electric cars are going to get paid per mile, 3 pence per mile, which is never mentioned. It's all becoming a little bit North Korea, isn't it? It's all getting a little bit sinister. All these little left-wing cronies have climbed out from behind their rocks of years of hiding away after Scargill and fought and that, and now they're all out with a vengeance to come and get us all. We're all going to be confined. They'll have us all in lockdowns again, just so we can find, because we've not got a choice. We've got no voice. We just pay the taxes and give freebies to anyone who wants it.
Particularly people who've worked hard and have earned a few quid and looked after themselves and their family. They're target number one, right?
Yeah, I get up at 10 to quarter to 5 every morning. I'm in work for about 5:30 and I go out working all day. I pay my taxes, I'm self-employed, I'm just sat in the car now with my daughter doing school run, just getting on with a normal day. And you've got to talk about the Westminster bubble. You've got the Labour bubble, haven't you? The red flag bubble that's just going to come and get us all. We're doomed until Nigel can come and save us.
What's going to happen when Nigel, assuming it goes Reform's way, and I mean, there is, a lot of consensus that, there's still 3 years to go. This could be more like Reform and the Tories linking together because maybe Reform won't quite do it solo.
I do think that might be the way. I think the way she performed yesterday, she got loads of ticks in the boxes. But they've still got a few weirdos in the Tories, haven't they? But something's got to change, and you can feel the tide turning. It's the Labour Party are just sucking us dry. They're just sucking the blood of the life out of the Union Jack out of Great Britain. We're not great anymore. We're not United Kingdom. Trump doesn't want to know us. We're laughed at by Europe. We've got immigrants coming over in the thousands just to live off us, and we're all just working hard to pay, just get by. And a lot of us, for years, we've all put our head in the sand, and we had enough 14 years of the Tories. And then I said when they voted Keir Starmer, God help us, and it's took him 16 months with his little red cronies to just drain us, absolutely drain us. And look, it's nice to see the Union Jack. I went out this morning, I seen, like you say, the alarm clock Britain. I've seen people standing out at the bus stops at 6 in the morning waiting to go to the shift, and they're going to be less well off for the next 4 or 5 years. And what's going to happen in the next budget? How much are you going to screw us for again? Because they're not going to get rid of the black hole, are they? He'll give the Falkland Islands away next, and maybe the Hebrides, and give Gibraltar back to the Spanish, and Jersey back to the French.
They'll probably try and sell any sort of Tory constituencies as well to someone. Maybe that's the next step. We'll all be speaking a very different language, who knows, by 2029. Listen, great call, Matthew. I love the cynicism, the scepticism, the fear as well, that was brilliantly articulated by Matthew. And do you know what? Even if we have fun with this, and we lampoon politicians, you're meant to lampoon, I can't think of a more... So you look back at governments, a greater example of everything that is wrong with politics in this country than the current government we have. For so many reasons, it would take me about a 3-hour sort of Reithian lecture to be able to, fully bring you the enormity and the full pelt of why I believe that. But it is... The mediocrity is the disease on this one. There are many other billion tentacles to my argument, but mediocrity. Clinical establishment mediocrity is right at the beating heart of what's running us. And that's the bit I resent. That's the bit I really resent. And I find the idea that I pay my taxes, I also get up early. I know I don't dig holes for a living, never claiming any of that kind of stuff, but it's that should bug anyone. This is Mark in Manchester. Back to that issue of juries. Mark, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, when you're interviewing these barristers, Ian, I think you should ask them which system they think spits out the truth more often than not, because I don't know if you've ever been to court. I've been to court a couple of times on civil matters, and these judges sit there and you don't think they're taking anything in, and then when they sum up, they are very, very bright.
I said this yesterday. When you go to a courtroom, and I've done some reporting in court cases, I've been a witness in a couple of court cases, and I get that whole thing. When somebody thinks the judge is asleep, and they're not asleep, they've just got their head down because they're listening to every single tiny moment of the case. These are sharp operators, these characters.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, I was a witness, and I was cross-examined by a barrister, and I was determined to tell the truth. And after 10 minutes, I was thinking, am I actually telling the truth? I mean, these guys can make black white and white black. So, in front of 12 of our peers, I'm not sure whether I'd fancy my chances with 12 of the average bears or the judge.
It is true. The first, you're absolutely right. The first time I went to a big court case as a journalist was at Maidstone Crown Court, and it was a really horrific murder case, and I won't go into the details, but I remember hearing the prosecution gave their case, and I thought, well, there's almost no point in listening to the defence because the case was so solid. and so obvious that this guy must have done it. And then after lunch, I went back and heard the defence. You know where I'm going with this, Mark. And suddenly I thought, oh, my God, maybe he didn't. Because I suddenly heard all these arguments I hadn't thought about, and they were brilliant. And I remember the judge coming out with a great line to the jury and saying, you know, please remember that science and DNA is a version of evidence, not the evidence. I thought there's another thing they've thrown in that I'd not thought about before. And there was all this brilliant stuff. But ultimately, one person or 12 people have got to decide. Why would one... I mean, I know what you're saying. They do play tricks. The whole point of these barristers is to play tricks with the mind of the juries, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you go for a doctor's opinion, do you want 2 doctors to argue about what's wrong with you and 12 of your peers to decide where you're going to go? I mean, at the end of the day, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know the answer, but, you know, these barristers, these people in the law, it's costing a lot of money. And I want the system that spits the truth out more often. Full stop. I'm not saying it's the judges or the juries.
Yeah.
You know, these barristers, they've been trained for years. It's a form of living for them. So obviously they're going to object.
Yeah.
That's my point.
No, I get it. It's a very good point, and it's almost a kind of a barrister-like argument that you've put in there, Mark. Thank you for that, where you're kind of testing the case in favour of the jury system and wondering, well, actually... is there a better system out there? And is the jury one? Are we getting carried away with the romance of 12 good men, women and children? Well, not children. 12 good men and true, it used to be called. But obviously, that includes... Yeah, because if you're thinking we're not acknowledging the fact that we live in a very diverse world now, you couldn't be wrong. I mean, I don't even care if you put some white people on some of those juries. That's how progressive I am. 0344 499 1000. Lines are open. We're going to talk to Sean Keach in just a second. He is the science and technology correspondent at The Sun. He's going to be with us. We've got a load of tech stuff to talk about. This is going to be a gorgeous segment. Amidst all the turmoil and troubling headlines, it's a nice breather. Stick the kettle on, get ready for a little bit of cheer and some real interest away from the grubby news agenda. Coming next with Sean Keach on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 25 to 4 on Talk. Luca, our favourite person of the week that comes into this studio is Sean Keach, who's Head of Science and Technology at The Sun. There's a good reason for that, Sean, because we can usually kind of divert from the grimness of the news agenda.
Bring a bit of joy.
Bring a bit of joy. Anyway, when we talk about, technology and gadgets and gizmos and developments in the world of tech, I've said this before, this stuff used to just make the geeky pages, didn't it, once upon a time? And now, it's front page because of everything that was happening with AI and, the way our lives change, everything we do with a smartphone, etc. But actually, today, just our first story here, does go back to the normal news agenda because it's about the budget.
I'm tired of the budget.
Sean Keach will bring you an analysis of budget 2025, everybody.
Oh, God.
Sean, you have the conch.
I'm bloody done with the budget. I'm fed up with it. I think this has probably been the most leaked budget ever. And then the fact that it was double leaked again with the OBR report just before.
Nothing worse than double leakage.
No,
that's exactly what we got.
Terrible. Even though it was a very controversial budget for many reasons, actually the tech response to the budget has been pretty good. There's a lot of a smorgasbord of tech goodies in this budget, which is good, I would say, because it's one of those things that we can't really afford to sort of bungle as a nation. So there was a lot of pressure for Rachel Reeves to get it right. And I would say generally the industry action has been good. So I've got my notes here. There's loads of stuff going into tech. Probably the big one is the UKRI, which is the Research and Innovation Fund. Lots of money going into that around AI, quantum computing. That's £38.6 billion over the next 4 years, which is pretty substantial. And they're also expanding the AI research resource, which is basically this giant pool of supercomputers that people with big brains can tap into and use and run, serious programs on. That's getting a big expansion. So they're in Bristol and Cambridge. They want to grow that by 20 times by 2030. So it won't just be scientists that can use that. It'll be companies as well that they can apply and use that supercomputer brain power to hopefully.
And am I right in saying we're already sort of fairly top of the league in this department?
Well, especially with research. I mean, part of the problem is a lot of the investment does tend to go to the west coast of America in terms of hardware.
So we do the research and
we do a lot of the research. But also a lot of these big tech companies, put a lot of money into the UK as well. And in fact, Google owns DeepMind, which is one of the big AI players, and they have a big office in London, and a lot of the DeepMind work is here. So, the money does come back. And then obviously there's this big northeast tech hub that they're setting up. In the budget, they announced it was already announced, but they sort of confirmed that there's going to be a new one. This AI growth zones in Wales. There's one in South Wales, one in North Wales.
Wow.
That's going to be 8,000 jobs. And not all of that will be permanent research jobs. Some of that will be construction and building these hubs. But, pretty big hubs. They're expanding the investment schemes.
Why do we need all this stuff? Why do we need the AI stuff? What's the deal there?
It's tricky with the AI one because...
Listen, you can make some funny videos of your mates and it looks bizarrely and frighteningly authentic, like someone's actually directed it in a studio. But beyond that, any other purpose?
It's funny. There is good increased skepticism, I would say, of AI stuff now, especially around the investment, because you sort of have this circular investment where, NVIDIA will say, oh, please buy our chips, OpenAI, and then OpenAI will invest money in NVIDIA, and it's all this sort of closed loop of investment.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of worry about, are we going to get returns on these investments? And sometimes you think, well, who cares about investments? This is sort of stuff that bankers worry about. But ultimately, pension funds and the banks that you bank with are putting your money into these investment schemes too.
That's
so
true.
if the entire economy is tied up in AI and there's increasing fears that it is an AI bubble, then that's bad news for everyone.
Because if you look at these data centres, as they call them, which are kind of warehouses the size of a small country, I mean, it's like, how much data space do you need? What are they doing in there? Because no one can really encapsulate that, because people go, oh, well, it's AI, and we say, but yeah, of course, banks and different algorithms and very fast and speedy responses to stuff, and all of that is great, but it's like, when you see it, you wouldn't be forgiven for thinking, if you wanted to be a little bit conspiratorial, Sean, you could look at it and go, there's something else going on here. No, I remember when I first saw the Apple HQ, the one they now have, I thought, you don't build that to make telephones.
No, it looks like an evil UFO, doesn't it?
There's much more going in. They don't build that to make a telephone.
Fun fact about the Apple, well, I think it's fun. If you go on your phone and look at the Apple Maps app, it's actually the location of Apple HQ, and you can see the spaceship on the Apple Maps icon on your phone.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a snapshot of Cupertino, which is where Apple is headquartered. So you see the little ring in the top right corner, and that's the Apple HQ.
This little one there?
Yeah.
What about
good,
that?
and that's the actual sort of interstate that goes
That's
past
really.
it as
I'm going
well.
to use that as an anecdote.
Also,
over
the clock
weekend.
app, the hand is actually ticking, the second hand. So that's also another fun app icon fact for you.
The clock. I've never noticed
It
that
ticks. A lot of
either.
people don't notice it. The calendar app
noticed that.
is actually the correct date. The icon for that will always show you the correct date.
I was aware of that. Yeah,
It's a good one.
Safari is a bit weird, isn't it? It's kind of a bit of a compass.
It is
of
a
some
compass. There's a bit of play on words, I think.
I think it probably.
There was a theory that the voice memo app has a sort of audio wave on it, and there was a theory that actually it's someone saying Apple, and that's the recording of what it would look like. But I don't know. I tried doing it into my phone here.
Did you really? I love that.
Yeah, for journalism, of course.
Of course, yeah. Well, you have to do this stuff in your world. Let's move to Uber, Sean, because the robot. Talking of strange things in tech, the robots are coming, and they'll be delivering you your pizzas.
This one took me quite by surprise because it's actually happening very soon. So Uber Eats has teamed up with this company called Starship Technologies, which makes these little sort of these little pods that roll around effectively and carries stuff for you. And they're launching it in Leeds in December. So if you place an Uber Eats order, they've got 10 of these robots. So, you know, there's a chance you'll still get a human, but sometimes you'll get a robot that will deliver the food for you. And so the robot turns up at the pizza shop or whatever. They put the pizza in the robot. It drives to you, it's locked, and then when it gets to you, you tap in the code, open it up, and there's your pizza. And it has a little flag so that hopefully people don't trip over on them and then, die and
So
sue
can't
Uber.
someone just hijack the robot and nick the pizza?
Well, they wouldn't have the access code to get in, and I think probably it's more faff to open up, try and break into a robot than
For a
just
pepperoni.
I mean, you see these videos of people walking into Greg's and just stealing stuff. I suspect if you're inclined to steal stuff, breaking into an Uber robot won't be your first port of call.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if they go past a school, kick-out time at about 3:30, one of those things. Load of hungry 14-year-old boys going, I'm starving. Oh, my God, look, it's the pizza robot.
You might be able to sit on one and catch a free ride.
Well, I was going to say, there's all of that. Did I make this up? I'm sure Domino's, like a lot of years ago, had something like this.
Yes, yeah, Domino's did, and other companies. So Starship Technologies, which is the company making the robots, they're not a new company, and in fact, they already operate in the UK. I think in Milton Keynes with Co-op. So this isn't a brand new technology, but it's certainly the first time Uber Eats is doing it in the UK, and I think the plan is to make it mass scale because they're testing it in Leeds and then Sheffield, and then they're going to move it to Europe next year. And then I think the US in 2027. So the plan is to, go big with this. And also, they don't accept tips. So if you try to tip the robot, it won't let you, which is, maybe good.
But it is still the case of robots coming over here, nicking our jobs.
It is, bloody robots stealing our jobs.
Who do they think they are? Who do they think they are?
They won't have the same charm, I don't think. As
No.
I was a Domino's delivery driver in a past life. It was my first job in uni.
Was it really?
And I quite liked it. You got £1 for petrol with every delivery that you made. Sometimes there was spare pizza at the end of the night. It was pretty good.
What's the old tip thing like on that? What percentage of tip is it?
It's probably better in America, but in the UK it was pretty poor. I'd say probably 1 in every 5 deliveries would get a tip.
You get a tip.
And actually, I tended to get more tips in sort of regular areas, whereas when you go to very posh areas, the tips very dry.
Yeah,
I don't know why that is.
I've heard this. There's a kind of, I think it's quite old now, but there's a YouTube video sort of does the rounds of somebody who'd obviously ordered food in the States, and I don't think it's fake because you can't tell them. Where somebody had obviously ordered their food on like a Deliveroo app, and they didn't put a tip on it because the person getting the food decided they were going to give them a cash tip.
Yes.
But in the meantime, the rider, as they call them, I'd obviously seen that there was no tip and put a note in the bag saying, thanks for the tip, you piece of whatever. And then, of course, she gets to the door, delivers the food, and the person behind the door goes, "Oh, here's $10 as well for your..." And the woman is completely... She goes, "Well, I can't take that."
Yeah.
And she's what? She goes, "Oh, sorry, there's a note in there," and just walks off.
A lot of the apps now will make you tip in advance, which I also think is kind of weird because I don't know what the service has been
Well,
like.
I was going to say, how can you tip in advance?
If it's a soggy
You don't
pizza.
know. Some stuff doesn't travel well. McDonald's chips don't travel at all.
No.
That's just a fact, I think even McDonald's will go, they're not really designed for this. Let's move to this story then. This is, I think disturbing, but good to talk about it. A warning from Virgin Media over a flood of scam texts. And of course, as the shopping season kicks in, there's going to be more of this.
There's going to be a flood of it. So Virgin Media O2, they put out this big warning, and it's generally about scam texts. They're saying they've blocked hundreds of millions this year, which isn't particularly surprising. But they said that a large proportion of those, and increasingly at this time of year, are these delivery scams. So these texts you receive saying there's an issue with your order, or your order's being held somewhere, or you need to pay a late fee on your order. and they come through, and then it's either a scam to get your info and then ultimately your money, or just your money straight away.
Sure.
And so they put out this warning, and they've said actually one of the key signs you can watch out for is if the text contains a link that says bit.ly. Now bit.ly is a link shortener, so it basically hides what the true link is. So if it's megascams.com or something, it wouldn't show up like that. It would just show up like bit.ly. Now, big companies like DBD and Every, they tend not to use these. They tend to use their own links. So if you see one of these, it should be a big warning sign that something is amiss. Bit.ly. It's a perfectly, legitimate link shortener, but scammers use it basically to conceal the link that they're sending you, so that you don't know that it's a scam link. So
I'm still disturbed that, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that the likes of Apple aren't able to sieve out scam emails more efficiently. I mean, because I get ones that have like 29 letters in the email address, who it's from. Yes. And you think, wouldn't that automatically, of all the things that would automatically go to junk, it would be that?
I get scams all the time. There are a couple of things I would say. The first one is we have a national scam reporting line, which is 7726, so you can free forward text to that, and that helps the system sort of learn what they should and shouldn't be blocking, and so all the network providers learn from that. And the other thing is, if you have an Android phone, the newer models have this system that uses AI to basically scan the conversation, and if they think you're being scammed, it will pop up with a message saying, we think this is a scam, we think this is because you get so many of these texts where, I've had 3 this week where it's someone being saying like, oh, can we have a little chat? I wanted to talk to you about something. And I suppose they think that I'm going to fall for it because I think it's a business thing. But you have these increasing scams where they open with like a cold open, so it doesn't seem like they're asking for money. Oh, who's this? Is it a wrong number? Is it someone that I forgot that I was meeting with? And then they pull you into some strange crypto investment, and then you've given some man £70,000.
You've sold your family. Who knows what could go on?
So they're getting very savvy, but just be cautious if someone's asking for your info or certainly money. Take a step back. Ask a family member. Is this?
Yeah, spot on. Black Friday, or much like the budget, it happens before the event, doesn't it? Because Black Friday goes on for weeks now.
I suspect in 10 years it'll just be a year-round thing. I mean, one day off.
Loads of. I was looking for some stuff online. It said, "Get this now in a Black Friday deal." I thought, I felt like I was breaking the law by ordering it on that day because it was not even Friday.
I almost think it's gone so far now that so many people. You'll hear people in sort of April, May. Yeah, it is. You hear people in like April, May saying, "Oh, I'm just going to wait for Black Friday." And so people are delaying these big purchases. If you're buying a TV or a computer or something, it probably is in your interest to wait a few months for Black Friday because the price drops are big. I would say one very good tip, especially if you're shopping on Amazon, is that this website called Camel, which is, I appreciate it's a strange name for a website, but it's a price history tracker. So if you take the product that you're looking for, say it's a Fire Stick or an electric toothbrush, you stick it into Camel, and it will show you the price history for that object through its entire history. It'll show you the average price that it's been sold at. It'll show you the lowest price ever. It'll show you the top price. And so then you can work out, is this one of those fake deals where they've said, oh, it's an 80% price drop, but actually it was only sold for that full price.
I read something at the weekend. I can't remember if it was the Times or the Telegraph. Did the items that have been cheaper this year at different times compared to the alleged, bargain bonanza Black Friday deal, and there were loads of them.
There were loads of fake deals, so you've got to really watch out for that. That's a very good tip. I would say also, especially on Amazon, they have a refurbished section, and they are also eligible for Black Friday deals. So if you're open to having a sort of restored product, you can get a sort of double deal where it's discounted for being refurbished and for Black Friday. So another good way to save a bit of money.
And finally, we'll have to be brief on this, Sean. Free TV box sells out in hours. What's free and what were they selling?
Oh, so there's this company called Freely, which is sort of a collab between the major broadcasters, and it's eventually going to be the replacement for Freeview. Now, this Freely service has been appearing built into TVs, but the first TV plug-in box has appeared that's Freely, and so you stick it into the back of your TV and you get all of these channels for free. You get some video games as well. It's £99. It's sort of a rival to the Fire Stick, but it's sold out on Amazon. It went out on sale last Friday. It's sold out within hours. Very popular. You can still buy it if you're willing to get it in a bundle with broadband packages, but it's proved extremely popular. So I suspect you're going to see a lot more of these Freely boxes appearing as a sort of alternative to the likes of Sky and Fire Sticks.
Sean, great as ever. You're not with us next week, I don't think, are you?
No, I'm on holiday.
You're on holiday, but we are after that going to get into some sort of Christmas stuff and some gadgets and TVs and that kind of thing. Lots to talk about. Sean Keach, we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks for having me.
This is Talk 10 to 4. Back with you coming next. Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 5 to 4. Let's get another call in. Ian is in Chesterfield on that issue of juries. Ian, good afternoon.
Oh, hello. Yeah, I think it'd be a total and utter disaster to have just a judge deciding somebody's future.
Okay.
Well, when you think judges have let rapists and illegals stay because they had too many tattoos and because they didn't like spicy food, are you seriously going to trust a left-wing judge?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could be argued as specific judges on those cases, who are human rights judges and are at tribunals rather than court cases, whereas your average judge tends to be right across it. You know, they might look a bit old and knackered, and that's a stereotype, I know, but they know their law, right?
Well, why do you think so many ridiculous decisions have been made by judges recently? You've seen the same as I've seen. People have been allowed to stay in this country, criminals, because of the most ridiculous things. And the judge, oh yes, you'd be at a disadvantage if you went back to Afghanistan. I mean, what?
But that is partly because we're part of. Yeah, but that's partly because we're part of the European Convention of Human Rights. So that means the judge has no choice but to employ that bit of law when deciding the case. I mean, don't get me wrong, you're absolutely bang on. These things are bonkers. I don't like chicken nuggets. Somebody the other day couldn't be deported to Germany because they didn't speak German.
Yeah,
they said.
Yeah, no, it's something that really riles a lot of us. And I had a look, and I found 20-odd examples where absolutely ludicrous, reasons. Oh, you know where I'm going. To me, they let their politics take over, and I'm afraid they are. A lot of them seem to be left-wing judges to me.
Yeah, well, there's something a bit bizarre going on. I think we can all agree on that. Ian, thank you very much indeed. I mean, a good judge, which I think are most judges, tend to be massively objective in their sentencing. But there's always been inconsistencies, and that's not a new thing. I know it's it's good fun to sort of put everything at the door of Keir Starmer. I'm probably the person most responsible for that. But when it comes to, we've often discussed, why was it that a bloke in Newcastle got a 2-year sentence for the same crime that a bloke in Plymouth got a 5-year sentence for, and someone in Swansea got a 10-year sentence. I don't know the answer to that. But juries are clearly far better than judges, on balance.
Judges are just mental most of the time. It's when you look at rulings, it's like, well, we didn't deport him because chicken nuggets,
Well, that's what we were just saying to that caller. But then
it's crazy.
They're specific judges, the tribunal judges and all that. So they've all got the kind of Starmery human rightsy thing going on. And
they've got a lot of that. A lot of that going on.
The fact you gravitate to that as a sort of speciality in law is quite telling, I think.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I don't think you gravitate to that because you think there's too many chicken nugget cases and I'm going to be the human rights person that argues against it.
There's a top female barrister who I've been reading her sort of a slew of stuff on X over recent days because she's really jumped on the whole, did Nigel Farage say terrible things in the playground? And she's there going, if you look at the testimonies of people and the witnesses and legally blah, 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 blah. And I've been so tempted, I haven't done it, but I've been so tempted to sort of post to her. You do realise as a judge you're supposed to listen to the evidence and make a decision, not decide you hate someone and then try and evidence
and then make the decision. And
right?
there's the problem.
Exactly.
The best judge, actually, was the person that got called... The judge, she got called a four-lettered word, not the F1, by a defendant that she
the one
jailed.
that's even worse than the F1, the next level up.
The next level up. She got
Right.
called that very loudly
The top
across
level.
the courtroom. So what did she do?